Steel rang across the training yard as Xiang Yu and Li Yao traded blows. Today felt different. His double battle sense had clicked. Hazy attack lines sharpened into thin, precise trajectories. Feints that fooled him yesterday now lit up like obvious traps. His eyes tracked, his body followed. Li Yao noticed immediately. This wasn't the same partner from this morning. His awareness had leapt as if years of polish were crammed into a night. He wasn't at her level, but the gap was closing, fast. Their blades smashed together, sparks fanned out, and they broke apart. Li Yao frowned. That hit carried more weight. He'd been hiding his true realm. Now his strikes felt at least fifth-layer body refining. She didn't ask. She was hiding too. Instead, she inched the pressure up, giving him the challenge he needed. Xiang Yu braced as another heavy cut crashed down. He'd just broken into the fourth layer, but the pressure only grew. Li Yao was matching him step for step. Good. Better to drown here and learn than die unprepared outside. He pushed forward, adapting to her rising speed. His mind saw openings. His muscles couldn't always cash the check. The awareness was there. The execution would catch up. At noon, they stopped as one, blades sheathing in sync. Time to eat. The dining hall fell reverently quiet once the food hit the table. Every bite sang. Even the ambient qi seemed to gather around the dishes, leaving a clean, refreshing aftertaste. Xiang Yu's cooking teetered on the edge of spirit cuisine. Eldegwood tasted, sighed, and shook his head. If the boy had a spiritual root, this would already be true spirit food. Then he glanced at his junior sister, a thought sparking. If Xiang Yu unlocked that theoretical martial physique, could he infuse qi into meals? The idea sent a pleasant chill down his spine. Across from him, Elder Huang caught the look and panicked. Was he eyeing her portion? Absolutely not. She inhaled, channeled qi, and vacuumed the plate clean in one dramatic pull. She immediately regretted not savoring it, then shot him a smug grin. Elder stared, baffled. Why was she looking at him like that? For a heartbeat, he wondered if she wanted to marry him just to secure lifetime access to his disciples' cooking. Ridiculous. He set the thought aside. She'd always been odd. Huang Fengqi kept glaring. Why does the old man look down on me? The nerve. Elder Gua cleared his throat. Xiang Yu. The room stilled. Your battle awareness has improved a lot, he said, thoughtful. But there's still one big problem. He drew a weathered manual from his sleeve and held it out. Senior brother. That's... Elder Huang's words died as she clapped a hand over her mouth, eyes wide at the sight of the ancient text. Senior brother. That is... Elder Huang's voice faded as she clapped a hand over her mouth, recognizing the battered text in Elder Gua's hand. Elder Gua didn't pause. The Mountain Heart Sutra, the other half of the Mountain Heart scripture, he said evenly. The scripture tempers the body. The sutra tempers the heart. He fixed Xiang Yu with a steady look. Your battle awareness improved, but you'll still fall behind. Not for lack of talent, but mindset. He stroked his beard. You cultivate to survive, not to dominate. Then in battle, you try to dominate. That fights your nature. You second-guess, you hedge, and when an opening appears, you're more likely to run than finish it. The words landed. Xiang Yu thought of that moment when Li Yao's sword jammed in the tree. How he'd created distance instead of pressing the kill. He'd called it caution. Elder Gua called it nature. It's good you've seen your nature early, the elder went on, but it'll also hold you back. Xiang Yu frowned. I don't follow. Picture a stronger opponent. No escape, Elder Gua said. What do? Look for a way to survive, Xiang Yu replied. You're thinking wrong, the elder said. Wrong how? Your nature is survival. Because you're weak, you equate survival with escape. Aren't they the same? Xiang Yu asked. Elder Gua shook his head. If you can't escape, do you automatically die? Silence. Escape is one path to survival, he said. Not the only one. What's the other? You fight. Xiang Yu blinked. That's against my nature. When you have no exit, Elder Gua said, killing your opponent is survival. The logic unsettled him because it made sense. Elder Gua set the manual in his hands. You've made escape your default. One day you won't have that option. Then only dominance keeps you alive. But even when strong, you'll still choose to flee first. This sutra won't change your nature. It will harden your resolve. When you run, you'll commit fully. When you fight, you'll commit fully. He rose. Elder Huang stood too, still staring at the manual's cover. In the corridor, she hurried after him. Why give that to Xiang Yu? Golden Core experts only start tempering the mind. He's already named his nature. Elder will cut in. If he lets it steer him, he'll hit walls and invite inner demons. This is the right time. He'd said what mattered. If the boy wasn't a fool, he'd understand. The manual was a bonus. If Xiang Yu could learn it, all the better. Back at the table, the sutra felt heavy in Xiang Yu's hands. The lesson rang true, yet distant. Was he just a coward dressing fear up as prudence? He wasn't convinced. Cornered by Dean Gu's disciples, he hadn't hesitated to kill because he'd calculated his odds. But what about an opponent he couldn't beat and couldn't outrun? The thought chilled him. He shelved the spiral. There'd be time to study the sutra. For now, training and the steady compounding that had carried him this far. Let's go, he said, tucking the manual into his robe. He nodded to Li Yao, and they headed for the yard, boots crunching along the worn path. Her face was calm, but her thoughts weren't. Is the old man right? She asked inwardly, directing the question to the ancient presence within her.
Hey everyone, Fire Scale Audiobooks here. If there's a novel you'd love to hear more of, you can support us on Patreon or Ko-fi. Depending on your tier, I'll make extra parts just for the stories you're most excited about. Usually I can only upload 4 to 5 parts of each novel, but with your support we can go beyond that. And of course, don't forget to hit subscribe. It helps more than you know.
The day's training unfolded against the backdrop of the Mountain Heart Pavilion's grounds, the rhythmic clash of steel against steel echoing through the air like a metallic symphony. Xiang Yu and Li Yao moved across the training area with increasing fluidity, their forms casting long shadows that stretched and contracted with the arc of the sun. The afternoon breeze carried the sounds of their exchange, blade meeting blade, footsteps shifting against packed earth, and the occasional grunt of exertion when a particularly powerful strike connected. Hours melted away as they continued their relentless practice. Sweat glistened on their brows, dampened their robes, yet neither suggested a break beyond what was absolutely necessary. They persisted until the western sky blazed with amber and crimson hues, signaling the dinner hour's approach. When they finally paused, the two made his way to the kitchen. Xiang Yu's movements possessed the same deliberate precision he showed in combat, though now directed toward different implements. Knives for slicing rather than striking, fire carefully controlled for cooking. His enhanced culinary awareness guided every choice, from ingredient selection to the exact moment each component entered the wok. The resulting meal brought everyone to the table with unusual promptness. Elder Gua and Elder Huang arrived with impeccable timing, as if their internal cultivation clocks had been calibrated to Xiang Yu's cooking schedule. Conversation remained minimal as they savored each bite, the quality of the food demanding their complete attention. After the rapid but appreciative meal, Xiang Yu and Li Yao returned to the training grounds. Even as darkness descended, they continued their practice. When midnight finally arrived, they exchanged goodnight wishes, their voices tinged with exhaustion but also satisfaction at the day's progress. Alone in his quarters, Xiang Yu settled onto his simple bed, the familiar blue glow of his system interface materializing before his eyes. He studied the status update with focused attention. Calculating settlement. Calculation complete. Enlightenment. Low, 24/1000. Battle instinct. 8/100,000. Mountain Heart Scripture. 4th layer. 22/400. Plus 22/400. Low-grade iron body technique. Intermediate. 50/300. Plus 50/300. Basic knife technique. Completion 40/500. Basic sword technique. Major success 100/400. Plus 100/400. Cook. 9th grade. 95 out of 100. Plus 5 out of 100. Experience points doubled. Cook. 9th grade. 95 out of 100. 8th grade. 0 out of 200. Basic sword technique. Major success, 100/400. Major success, 200/400. Basic knife technique. Completion, 40/500. Completion, 80/500. Low-grade iron body technique. Intermediate, 50/300. Intermediate, 100/300. Mountain Heart Scripture. Fourth layer, 22/400. Fourth layer, 44/400. Battle Instinct, 8/100. 000. 16/100. 000. Enlightenment. Low, 24/1000. Low, 48/1000. Next settlement, 23 hours, 59 minutes, and 59 seconds. The exhilarating sensation of enlightenment increase washed over him like a mental tidal wave. This time, the feeling lingered longer than before, bringing crystalline insights into his various techniques. The connections formed in his mind with greater clarity than ever, pathways of understanding illuminating previously obscure concepts. Based on its current rate of improvement, Xiang Yu calculated he would likely grasp the elusive mid-grade movement technique once his enlightenment reached 100 points, just 2 settlements away. He filed this realization away without dwelling on it excessively. His attention shifted to his cooking skills. Since experience didn't overflow when crossing advancement thresholds, his cooking had only increased by 5 points before breaking through to 8th grade. Yet those final 5 points had yielded more insights than all previous improvements combined. Most significantly, he now possessed the theoretical knowledge to create genuine spirit foods. Though without a spiritual root or spiritual fire, this remained purely academic. He dismissed the thought with pragmatic acceptance. Next, he examined his battle instinct, now impressively in double digits. The previous 8 points had already transformed his combat awareness dramatically. He could barely imagine how 16 points would manifest. And now that this attribute had reached double digits, future doublings would accelerate its growth exponentially. He allowed himself a rare moment of anticipation, visualizing the capabilities he might possess when this attribute eventually reached its maximum. The Mountain Heart Scripture had improved by 22 points, and after doubling stood at 44, it wouldn't be long before he broke through to the 5th layer. His sword technique's progress remained remarkable, advancing by 100 points before doubling to 200, already halfway to completion. At this rate, it would likely reach completion after the next settlement, rapidly catching up to his knife technique. Speaking of which, since he hadn't practiced it today, it remained at 40 points, now 80 after doubling. Both weapons seemed to be racing toward great completion stage. Given the sword technique had already reached its halfway mark, Xiang Yu decided to dedicate the following day entirely to knife practice. His iron body technique had earned 50 points, doubled to 100, though still short of the halfway threshold. Yet this particular skill was easily practiced alongside other activities, so he anticipated reaching the midpoint before the next settlement. Having methodically analyzed his daily progress, he summoned his complete status. Name: Xiang Yu. Realm: Body Refining 4th Layer. Species: Human. Spiritual Root: Null. Enlightenment: Low, 48/1000. Battle Instinct: 16/100. 000. Professions: Cook. 8th grade, 0 out of 200. Techniques: Low-grade iron body technique. Intermediate, 100/300. Basic knife technique. Completion, 80/500. Basic sword technique. Major success, 200/400. Scriptures: Mountain Heart Scripture, 4th layer, 48/400. System function, double EXP, cooldown, 24 hours. After meticulously examining his status, Xiang Yu surrendered to the weight of fatigue pressing against his eyelids. Just as sleep began to claim him, a fleeting memory jolted him back to alertness. He rose from his bed with sudden purpose, reaching into his pocket to extract the Mountain Heart Sutra that Elder Gua had entrusted to him earlier that day. The ancient manual rested in his palm. He turned it over contemplatively, deliberating whether he should attempt even a brief practice session. His carefully structured training regimen left little room for additional activities during daylight hours, those precious moments when he could grind experience through sparring with Li Yao couldn't be sacrificed. Perhaps he could allocate just an hour before sleep? After all, this text supposedly complemented the Mountain Heart scripture he already practiced, suggesting they shared a foundational approach. 1 hour, he decided firmly, setting a mental boundary for this experiment. Opening the sutra with careful hands, he scanned the initial instructions. The text directed practitioners to assume a lotus position for meditation, focusing on heart and mind cultivation rather than physical strengthening. This aligned with Elder Guo's description. The scripture tempered the body, while the sutra tempered the mind. Xiang Yu settled into the prescribed position, crossing his legs and straightening his spine. His hands rested on his knees, palms facing upward in the traditional receptive posture. Following the manual's guidance, he regulated his breathing while affirming the nature of his heart and mind. As the minutes passed, an unexpected sensation began to manifest. His consciousness seemed to detach from physical awareness, floating untethered in an empty void. The training ground, his quarters, even his bodily sensations, all faded from perception. He existed as pure awareness in a dimensionless space, neither hot nor cold, neither light nor dark. The peculiar state intensified gradually, the void seeming to envelop his consciousness more completely with each passing moment. Any desire for action or achievement dissolved into nothingness. The concerns that typically dominated his thoughts, survival, advancement, power acquisition, all melted away like morning frost under sunlight. A profound contentment with mere existence washed over him, a tranquility so complete it bordered on oblivion. Why strive? Why fight? Simply existing in this perfect emptiness seemed sufficient, eternal, peaceful non-action. The seductive pull of this state grew stronger until a sharp intrusion shattered the void, someone knocking at his door, followed by a familiar voice calling out, "Senior brother, are you inside?" Li Yao's voice pierced through the meditative trance, yanking Xiang Yu back to physical reality with jarring suddenness. "Senior brother, are you inside?" Li Yao's voice penetrated into Xiang Yu's consciousness like a lifeline, pulling him from the depths of an endless void. In the next second, his eyes flickered open, adjusting to reality with disorienting suddenness. "Senior brother, I'm coming in," her voice announced as the door swung open. Li Yao paused in the doorway, observing Xiang Yu still seated in his meditation posture, awareness slowly returning to his features. "Senior brother, are you okay?" Concern colored her tone. "You didn't come to train, so I thought something happened." Xiang Yu blinked several times, his mind still half-trapped in that boundless emptiness. The transition back to physical reality felt jarring, like being violently yanked from a dream. "Training?" he asked, confusion evident in his voice. Only then did the realization strike him. Sunlight streamed through the open doorway, illuminating his quarters with morning brightness. How was it already dawn? He had only intended to practice for 1 hour. How had the entire night slipped away? That sensation of peaceful non-existence. The memory sent a chill down his spine. How dangerously seductive it had been. He exhaled slowly, deliberately steadying himself. "Oh, training. I was just practicing the technique given by Master. I lost track of time, sorry," he explained as he rose to his feet with careful movements, his body stiff from hours of motionless meditation. "We could go now." The two disciples walked slowly toward the training grounds. Xiang Yu remained distracted, his thoughts circling back to what had happened during his practice of the Mountain Heart Sutra. Was that what falling to mental demons felt like? His greatest desire was survival, so perhaps his mental demons manifested as contentment with mere existence, feeling nothing, doing nothing, just being. His expression hardened as a troubling thought crossed his mind. If Li Yao hadn't called out to him, he might truly have fallen into that trap. That wasn't the survival he wanted. He had no desire to become a vegetable merely existing. He wanted to truly live, to survive without sacrificing other aspects of his life. Well, except for his body, of course, but that was different. With a contemplative sigh, he mentally summoned his status screen, curious whether anything had changed after his night of meditation. To his surprise, something had indeed changed. Mind, level 1. Enlightenment. Low, 50/1000. Battle instinct, 20/100,000. Scriptures. Mountain Heart Scripture. 4th layer, 48/400. Mountain Heart Sutra. Level 1. 1/1000. A new stat had appeared. Mind at level 1. Even more surprising was that his enlightenment had increased by 2 points, and his battle instinct had jumped by 4 points. The enlightenment increase wasn't entirely unexpected, given the high-level scripture he'd practiced, but the battle instinct gain was remarkable. Apart from his initial 1 point, he hadn't been able to raise this attribute without the system's doubling effect. Now it had increased by 4 points, almost half of what he had possessed the previous day. He examined the new entry in his scripture section with fascination. The Mountain Heart Sutra was only at level 1, yet required 1,000 points to advance. Still, he was genuinely surprised he could learn it at all. If he had to guess, both scriptures were at least high grade. Perhaps he'd succeeded because he had already mastered the Mountain Heart Scripture, considered the other half of this cultivation method. Despite his close brush with mental demons, Xiang Yu recognized the sutra's tremendous value. It offered a pathway to increase his enlightenment and battle instinct more rapidly. Though the danger of falling into that seductive void remained, he simply needed to exercise greater caution in the future. Xiang Yu and Li Yao moved across the training ground in their familiar dance of steel against steel. Today, Xiang Yu wielded his knife instead of the sword since his sword technique had already reached the halfway point to completion. Besides, he needed to push his knife technique further to maintain its lead. If both techniques reached the same level simultaneously, the sword would no longer mooch off of the knife's advanced insights, which would slow down his pace. As his blade met Li Yao's with practiced precision, Xiang Yu noticed a subtle yet significant change in his combat awareness. The exchanges felt more fluid, his responses more natural. This wasn't about raw power. He remained hopelessly outmatched by his junior sister in that department, but rather his adaptability had markedly improved. The doubling of his battle instinct certainly played a role, but he suspected the newly acquired mind stat contributed equally to this enhancement. When his battle awareness revealed openings in Li Yao's guard, his mind seemed to sharpen with laser-like focus, filtering out extraneous stimuli and distractions. The world narrowed to just that one crucial moment, that single opportunity. Was this what Elder Guo meant about giving his all to whatever path he chose? The clarity felt invigorating, yet he recognized that this enhanced focus would apply equally to escape should he choose that option instead. His nature remained unchanged. Survival still drove his every decision, but his execution had become more decisive, more complete. If a single stat in the mind stat produced such noticeable improvements, what might become possible as it advanced further? The prospect of reaching level 2 or beyond sent a thrill of anticipation through him. Li Yao blocked a particularly aggressive strike from his knife, creating distance between them with a graceful backward leap. She observed her senior brother with analytical eyes, noting the subtle shift in his approach. Unlike previous sessions where hesitation plagued his movements, today he attacked with greater assertiveness, actively capitalizing on opportunities rather than second-guessing them. Though still far from the aggressive fighter she hoped to mold him into, this willingness to counterattack represented significant progress compared to his former habit of waiting to confirm each opening, by which time the opportunity had invariably vanished. From his private chamber overlooking the training grounds, Elder Guo watched the disciples with growing satisfaction. His weathered eyes tracked Xiang Yu's movements carefully, noting the improved clarity and purpose behind each strike. A slight nod of approval moved his beard as he reconsidered his initial assessment of the boy's potential. He had clearly underestimated Xiang Yu's comprehension ability, The disciple had not only managed to learn the Mountain Heart Sutra, but was already integrating its benefits into his combat style. If the boy continued at this rate, combining his extraordinary battle awareness with the mental clarity provided by the sutra, he would undoubtedly develop into a formidable combat expert. The golden sunlight poured over the training grounds as Xiang Yu and Li Yao continued their relentless sparring. Steel clashed against steel in a rhythmic symphony of combat, their movements growing more fluid with each exchange. Neither disciple showed any sign of yielding as the morning sun climbed higher, its rays intensifying from gentle warmth to scorching heat. Their dedication remained unwavering, sweat glistening on their brows as they pushed each other to new limits. Only when the sun reached its zenith, signaling the lunch hour, did they finally lower their weapons. With practiced synchronization, they sheathed their blades and made their way toward the kitchen. Inside the kitchen, Xiang Yu moved with a grace that hadn't been present before. His newly elevated 8th grade cooking skill manifested in every precise movement of his hands. The knife in his grip became an extension of himself, slicing through vegetables and meat with surgical precision. Each cut was measured perfectly, each ingredient prepared with mathematical exactness that bordered on artistry. Li Yao, initially tasked with washing vegetables, found herself transfixed by her senior brother's performance. Her hands stilled over the basin as she watched him work, mesmerized by the professionalism. He looked like a master craftsman at work. His movements flowed with elegant efficiency, economical yet somehow beautiful in their precision. When he slid open the lid of the final dish, steam billowed forth in fragrant clouds. The aroma spread throughout the Mountain Heart Pavilion like an invisible summons, rich and complex with layered notes that promised extraordinary flavor. Almost immediately, the padding of footsteps announced the arrival of Elder Guo and Elder Huang, drawn by the irresistible scent. As the dishes were arranged on the table, anticipation hung heavy in the air. The moment Elder Guo gave his customary nod of approval, everyone eagerly reached for their chopsticks, impatient to begin. Elder Guo stared at the meal before him with widening eyes. "This is—" The words died in his throat as he observed something extraordinary. Though not true spiritual food, the dishes possessed qualities that transcended ordinary cuisine. The ambient qi in the atmosphere seemed drawn to the food, wisps of energy attaching themselves to the expertly prepared ingredients. Unable to resist any longer, he seized his chopsticks and attacked the meal with uncharacteristic haste. After clearing his plate with impressive speed, a satisfied burp escaped him. He could feel the qi from the meal spreading slowly into his dantian, like gentle ripples in a pond. Though not as effective as proper cultivation, the sensation was undeniably pleasurable, his spiritual energy increasing, however marginally, simply from enjoying a meal. When Elder Huang finished her portion, her expression darkened as she stared at her empty plate. The pavilion fell silent as everyone turned toward her, confusion evident on their faces. Without warning, she rose from her seat, the sudden movement startling Elder Guo beside her. With deliberate steps, she approached Xiang Yu and stood before him. "Martial ant?" Xiang Yu questioned, uncertainty in his voice. She placed her hand on his shoulder, and to everyone's shock, tears began streaming down her face. "This sure is so magnificent," she declared with emotional intensity. Suddenly aware of her undignified display, she hastily wiped away her tears. "It seems Martial Nephew's cooking has achieved a breakthrough," she observed, composing herself. "It's such a pity you don't have a spiritual root, so you can't make real spiritual food." A smile spread across her face. "But I have just the solution for you." Elder Guo stood abruptly. "You mean—" Before he could finish, she continued. "That's right. There's a spirit fire I acquired back when I was young, but I kept it since it wasn't compatible with me." Her eyes gleamed with enthusiasm. "After seeing your talent, I've decided you're the only person worthy of wielding this spirit flame." Fresh tears streamed down her face, as though she'd finally found a worthy successor. Stop pretending." You just want to give it to him so he can make you spirit food. Elder Gua interjected, seeing through her motives. Should I not give it to him? She snapped back sharply. Elder Gua paused, suddenly remembering that Xiang Yu was, after all, his disciple. If the boy could make spirit food, wouldn't he, as the master, be the first to taste it? My apologies, I have misspoken, he conceded, lowering himself back into his chair. In his mind, laughter bubbled up at the fortuitous situation. If his disciple received a spirit flame, it would not only enhance the boy's combat abilities, but also allow him to prepare spirit food for his master, a perfect demonstration of filial piety. After years of nurturing this seemingly talentless disciple, he might finally see a worthwhile return on his investment. Elder Gua suppressed a smile, silently congratulating himself on his genius. What's a spirit flame? Li Yao asked internally, her curiosity piqued by the elder's conversation. You can think of them as natural treasures born from the world. The Empress's voice echoed in her mind with scholarly precision. Though they can be used for combat, they are mostly used for secondary professions, pill refining, artifact refining, or in your senior brother's case, cooking, she explained. Xiang Yu remained silent, his expression contemplative as he considered his martial aunt's unexpected proposal. Before he could fully process the implications or formulate a response, Elder Huang's enthusiasm overwhelmed any potential hesitation. I'll go bring it right away, she exclaimed, her excitement palpable as she took to the air, her figure becoming a dwindling silhouette against the azure sky. Elder Gua rose from his seat. Don't think too much about it, and just accept it, he advised, stroking his beard thoughtfully. Your martial aunt is a researcher and possesses many valuable treasures. It would be a pity if you didn't take advantage of her generosity every once in a while. With that parting wisdom delivered, he too departed, leaving the disciples alone with their thoughts. Xiang Yu watched his master's retreating form, internally acknowledging the soundness of the elder's counsel. Even without such encouragement, he had already resolved to accept the gift. Spirit flames were exceptionally rare treasures, coveted by cultivators across the realms. The practical benefits alone made refusal unthinkable. The most appealing aspect of spirit flames, he reflected, was their nature as perpetually burning elemental essences that required no qi to sustain. Unlike most cultivation techniques that remained inaccessible to him due to his lack of spiritual roots, a spirit flame would allow him to perform impressive feats like coating his weapons with mystical fire, significantly enhancing his combat capabilities despite his limitations. Still, he couldn't help but marvel at his martial aunt possessing such a treasure. The Azure Cloud Sword sect was merely an 8th-grade sect in the greater hierarchy of cultivation powers. For Elder Huang to have an item valued even by 1st-grade sects was truly remarkable. Of course, the true value depended entirely on the flame's grade. Spirit flames were classified from 9th grade to 1st grade, with 1st being the most powerful. Perhaps she merely possessed a 9th grade flame, though even that would be a considerable treasure by any reasonable standard. Questions about why the flame proved incompatible with her flickered through his mind, but he set such speculation aside. The afternoon training session awaited, and maintaining his rigorous schedule remained paramount to his exponential growth. With unspoken agreement, he and Li Yao turned toward the training grounds, ready to resume their relentless pursuit of martial excellence. The warm glow of sunset cast long shadows across the training grounds as Xiang Yu and Li Yao continued their rigorous practice. Their weapons clashed rhythmically, each strike and parry flowing into the next with increasing precision as they pushed each other to new limits. Only when dusk fully settled did they finally lower their weapons, acknowledging it was time for the evening meal. As Xiang Yu approached the dining area, ready to begin his culinary preparations, a sudden gust of wind swept through the area, announcing his martial aunt's arrival. Elder Huang descended gracefully from the sky, her robes billowing around her. In the next moment, Elder Gua appeared as well, his curiosity evidently piqued by her dramatic entrance. Elder Huang produced a lamp from her spatial storage, its appearance deceptively ordinary save for one remarkable feature: a black flame burning steadily within the glass enclosure. With deliberate movements, she removed the lid, and immediately the black flame attempted to escape. Acting swiftly, she summoned a bright red flame from her palm, enveloping the black fire within its grasp. Despite her obvious power, a slight tension in her face revealed the effort required to contain it. "I don't know what flame this is since I've never seen a black flame before," she explained, her eyes never leaving the dancing darkness in her grasp. "When I got it, I thought it was a special flame. I have the Phoenix bloodline, which allows me to absorb flames to enhance myself. But when I tried to absorb this flame, it also tried to absorb my flames. I thought it was because my bloodline was weaker, so I waited to enhance my bloodline so I could be able to absorb it." A sigh of disappointment escaped her lips, her expression momentarily clouding. "Although I've had a few chances to advance my bloodline, it's only advanced a little each time, nowhere near what I'd need to be able to consume this flame." Her demeanor brightened suddenly, as if shaking off past regrets. "Instead of letting it rot there for God knows how long, you should have it," she declared, pushing the flame, still wrapped in her own crimson energy, towards Xiang Yu. Xiang Yu watched the approaching black flame with fascination, his eyes capturing every detail of its mesmerizing dance. Though dark, it wasn't completely so. Tiny sparks of white flickered throughout its core, appearing and vanishing in an instant, reminiscent of stars twinkling in a night sky. As he mentally questioned what level this mysterious spirit flame might be, he cautiously extended his hand. The moment his fingers drew near, the black flame leaped from Elder Huang's control, wrapping around his hand with startling eagerness. Alarmed, Xiang Yu stumbled backward, frantically shaking his arm in panic, certain he would burn to death. Yet the expected agony never came, and as suddenly as it had appeared, the flame vanished entirely. "Where did it go?" he asked, bewildered, examining his unmarked hand. Elder Huang smiled knowingly. "This flame is really fond of you. It seems I made the right choice giving it to you." From the sidelines, Elder stroked his beard thoughtfully. It was highly unusual for a spirit flame to show such affinity for anyone. Even now, it had tried to escape Elder Huang, who by all accounts should have been its ideal match with her Phoenix bloodline. Why would the flame be so attracted to Xiang Yu, someone without even basic spiritual roots? Could his disciple be concealing something? Yet the genuine confusion on the young man's face suggested he was as mystified as anyone. Elder Guo released a contemplative sigh. His disciple, it seemed, was more special than anyone had imagined. "What do I do now?" Xiang Yu asked, breaking the momentary silence that had fallen over the gathering. His voice held a mixture of curiosity and caution, understandable reactions to having a mysterious flame seemingly disappear into his body. Elder Huang's expression brightened with enthusiasm as she stepped closer, her robes rustling softly in the evening breeze. "Usually, refining a flame takes a long time, but since it seems attracted to you, it shouldn't be that big of a problem," she explained. Her eyes gleamed with interest as she observed her martial nephew. "Just try to feel the flame throughout your body and bring it out." Nodding, Xiang Yu closed his eyes, his expression settling into focused concentration. The world around him faded away as he turned his awareness inward, searching for the mysterious fire that had so eagerly bonded with him. At first, there was nothing, just the familiar sensations of his own body, the steady rhythm of his heartbeat, the flow of blood through his veins. Then, gradually, he sensed something new, a subtle warmth unlike his natural body heat, concentrated somewhere deep within his core. Several seconds passed as he familiarized himself with this foreign presence, mentally reaching toward it, attempting to coax it outward. Suddenly, as if responding to an unspoken command, a dark flame materialized on his palm. It danced silently, casting no heat that would harm him, yet he could feel its power humming through his fingers. Unlike ordinary fire, this flame made no sound, no crackling, no gentle roar. It burned in eerie silence, its darkness occasionally punctuated by those fleeting white sparks. A smile of satisfaction spread across Xiang Yu's face. This unexpected gift represented more than just a rare treasure. It was another tool for survival in this dangerous cultivation world. As the thought of survival crossed his mind, he wondered whether this new acquisition would manifest in his system. With practiced mental focus, he summoned his status screen, and there it was, neatly cataloged among his other abilities. Spirit Flame, Abyssal Void Flame, 7th grade, 1/30,000. Surprise flickered across his features as he processed this information. A 7th grade flame. The revelation stunned him. From Elder Huang's casual demeanor, it seemed she hadn't realized the true value of what she had given away. This wasn't merely a valuable treasure. It was the kind of treasure that would provoke bloody conflicts even among top-tier sects. Even more astonishing was the experience bar attached to the flame. In all his research about cultivation resources, Xiang Yu had never encountered any mention of spirit flames being upgradable. The common understanding was that a flame's grade remained fixed eternally. A 7th grade flame would always remain 7th grade. Yet here was his system suggesting otherwise. The experience requirement was daunting, second only to battle instinct in magnitude. Still, this didn't diminish Xiang Yu's excitement. If anything, it intensified his anticipation. What might this flame become if upgraded? What powers would it possess if he somehow managed to elevate it to 1st grade? The possibilities sent a thrill of anticipation through him. Yet as he considered the flame's name, Abyssal Void Flame, an inexplicable uneasiness settled in his stomach. Something about the name gave him an ominous feeling, though he couldn't quite put his finger on it. Across the courtyard, Li Yao observed the black flame dancing on her senior brother's palm with widening eyes. "Do you know that flame?" she silently asked the ancient empress residing within her. The empress, who had been uncharacteristically quiet during this entire exchange, released a subtle sigh. "Yeah, I do," came the reluctant response. "Is it good?" Li Yao asked enthusiastically, hoping for confirmation that her senior brother had received something truly beneficial. "Well, that's hard to say," the empress replied with uncharacteristic hesitation. "That flame seems to be a fragment of the Abyssal Void Flame, which is one of the 10 original flames. It's quite rare to get a fragment this big, even in the immortal realm." "Then why is it a bad thing?" Li Yao pressed, confusion evident in her mental voice. A powerful, rare flame sounded like an unequivocal blessing for her senior brother. "Well, the appearance of such a big fragment is bound to attract attention from some people who want it for themselves," the empress explained, her tone grave. "Huh, but didn't Marshall Ann always have it? Why hasn't anyone ever appeared?" Li Yao questioned, struggling to understand the sudden shift from fortune to potential danger. "Well, there are probably many interested parties, so they keep each other in check," came the empress's cryptic response. "Then what has changed?" Li Yao pressed, her concern mounting. "Well, if you had something you really wanted, but there were others like you, so you kept each other in check, what do you think would happen if someone random suddenly took the thing you were eyeing?" the empress asked pointedly. Realization dawned on Li Yao's face as understanding clicked into place. While the flame remained unrefined, competing interests maintained a stalemate. But now that Xiang Yu had successfully bonded with it, that fragile balance would shatter. The various parties would no longer concern themselves with keeping each other in check. They would simply pursue the flame and, by extension, her senior brother. A fierce protectiveness surged through Li Yao. Things were becoming truly dangerous. She needed to accelerate her own cultivation, to grow stronger faster, so she could shield her senior brother from the troubles that would inevitably come. Meanwhile, in an unknown location dimension beyond mortal comprehension, an entity of unfathomable size floated in an endless void. This creature, so vast that neither beginning nor end could be perceived, suddenly opened its eyes. Ancient orbs that had witnessed the birth and death of countless worlds. Someone seems to have refined a fragment of mine." The creature's voice resonated through the emptiness, a sound that could shatter planets yet somehow remain confined to this isolated pocket of nothingness. The being's consciousness stretched across incomprehensible distances, focusing on a specific point in the endless void. That direction, a mortal world? Surprise colored its ancient voice for a brief moment before shifting to a tone of unmistakable excitement. Interesting, since his martial aunt had been so generous, gifting him a flame whose true value she might not have fully comprehended. Xiang Yu felt compelled to express his gratitude. What better way than through his greatest talent? With his newly acquired spirit flame, he could finally create the genuine spirit food she so desperately craved. When he had broken through to 8th grade cooking, vast repositories of knowledge about spiritual cuisine had materialized in his mind. Until now, this knowledge had remained purely theoretical. Lacking either spiritual roots or a spiritual flame, he couldn't apply these techniques. But everything had changed. The abyssal void flame now nestled within him like a loyal companion, waiting to be called forth. Xiang Yu held his hand near the cooking vessel, summoning the black flame. It danced across his fingers without burning him, responding to his mental commands with remarkable precision. Unlike cooking with crude firewood, the spirit flame offered unprecedented temperature control. He could adjust its heat with mere thoughts, perfect for the delicate preparations spiritual cuisine demanded. The gathered audience watched in silent awe as he worked. The dark flames leapt and twisted above the pan, occasionally punctuated by those tiny white sparks that resembled distant stars. Sensing their rapt attention, Xiang Yu incorporated flourishes into his technique. He tossed ingredients high into the air, expertly cooking them with controlled bursts of flame as they descended, before catching them perfectly in the pan. Eldergu's eyes widened at the spectacle. Elder Huang leaned forward, entranced by the performance. Even Li Yao, who had witnessed his cooking numerous times before, found herself mesmerized by this elevated display of culinary artistry. The sweet, complex aroma rising from the dishes intensified their anticipation, causing involuntary salivation. Though he secretly enjoyed their attention, Xiang Yu recognized his audience's growing impatience. He completed his preparations and began serving, presenting the first dish to Elder Huang with a respectful bow. "You brat, you dare serve outsiders before your own master." Elder Gu couldn't help but curse, his beard quivering with indignation. Elder Huang smirked triumphantly. "No need to be so riled up. Martial nephew simply knows how to treat a guest, unlike someone else." Her teasing tone only intensified the elder's frustration. Elder Gu could only respond with a dismissive scoff as Xiang Yu quickly served him next, followed by Li Yao. When they finally began eating, identical expressions of wonder bloomed across their faces. The moment the food touched their tongues, extraordinary flavors cascaded throughout their mouths. Complex, harmonious notes impossible in ordinary cuisine. As they swallowed, the spirit food's rich qi spread throughout their bodies, rejuvenating every cell and marginally enhancing their cultivation. Even Xiang Yu, as he sampled his own creation, marveled at the sensation of qi briefly infusing his qi-less body before quickly dissipating as he didn't have spiritual roots. Was this what cultivators experience continuously? Many claimed cultivation brought pleasure exceeding even carnal delights, and he could now understand why. Still, this fleeting sensation paled in comparison to the mental tsunami of his system's enlightenment doubling. They devoured every morsel, leaving their plates spotlessly clean, unwilling to waste even a single grain of the precious spirit food. As Xiang Yu and Li Yao cleaned the dishes afterward, the ancient empress spoke into the young woman's mind. "You're quite lucky to have a spiritual chef as a senior brother. Now you can enjoy spirit meals every day," she observed with rare appreciation. "Although his skill level remains modest for now, as he improves, it will become a tremendous advantage. Your breakthrough speed will surpass most cultivators. Except for truly powerful immortals, few can consume spirit food twice daily," she added thoughtfully. Li Yao couldn't suppress her smile. Her senior brother truly was the best. With his cooking accelerating her cultivation, she would grow stronger even faster. Exactly what she needed to protect him from the dangers that would inevitably come seeking his newfound flame. After the hearty meal, everyone went their separate ways. Xiang Yu and Li Yao returned to their training, their movements energized by the qi-infused food they had consumed. The spiritual nourishment had restored their vitality and nearly doubled their stamina, allowing them to train with an intensity that surpassed even their morning session. Steel clashed against steel as they sparred beneath the stars, their silhouettes illuminated by the moon's gentle glow. Only when midnight arrived did they finally sheath their weapons, exchanging respectful nods before retiring to their separate quarters. In his simple dwelling, Xiang Yu reclined on his bed of leaves, summoning the familiar blue interface that had become his nightly ritual. The system screen materialized before him, its soft glow illuminating his contemplative features. Enlightenment. Low, 50/1000, plus 2/1000. Battle Instinct, 20/100, 000, plus 4/100, 000. Spirit Flame, Abyssal Void Flame, 7th grade, 2/30, 000. Mountain Heart Sutra, Level 1, 1/1000. Mountain Heart Scripture, 4th layer, 86/400, plus 38/400. Low-grade Iron Body Technique, Intermediate, 200/300, plus 100/300. Basic Knife Technique, Completion, 100/500, plus 60/500. Basic Sword Technique, Major Success, 200/400. Cook, 8th grade, 3/200, plus 3/200. Experience points doubled. Cook, 8th grade, 3/200, 8th grade, 6/200. Basic Sword Technique, Major Success, 200/400, Completion, 0/500. Basic Knife Technique, Completion, 100/500, Completion, 200/500. Low-grade Iron Body Technique, Intermediate, 200/300, Major Success, 0/400. Mountain Heart Scripture, 4th layer, 86/400, 4th layer, 172/400. Mountain Heart Sutra, Level 1, 1/1000, Level 1, 2/1000. Spirit Flame, Abyssal Void Flame, 7th grade, 2/30, 000, 7th grade, 4/30, 000. Battle Instinct, 20/100, 000, 40/100, 000. Enlightenment. Low, 50/1000, low, 100/1000. The first sensation to wash over him was the breathtaking doubling of his enlightenment. It crashed through his consciousness like a tidal wave, expanding his perception beyond anything he had previously experienced. It felt as if someone had peeled away a veil he hadn't even realized existed, revealing entirely new dimensions of understanding. Colors seemed more vibrant, sounds more distinct, patterns more evident. The mental tsunami persisted longer than usual before gradually receding, leaving behind crystalline clarity in its wake. His thoughts seemed sharper, more focused, undoubtedly an effect of the Mountain Heart Sutra's influence, which had doubled once again. The mental discipline imparted by the ancient text complemented his growing enlightenment, creating synergies he was only beginning to comprehend. Next came subtle insights regarding his cooking skills. Unlike previous revelations, these were modest improvements, minor refinements to techniques he'd already mastered rather than learning any new concepts. Given the mere 3-point increase, this modest progression seemed reasonable. It hardly concerned him, though. His cooking experience would accumulate rapidly with daily practice, especially now that he could create genuine spirit food. The battle instinct attribute continued its impressive trajectory. What had once been his most stubbornly resistant stat was now accelerating at a pace that promised to reach its maximum threshold much sooner than he'd originally calculated. The exponential nature of doubling would make each subsequent increase more substantial than the last. His newest acquisition, the abyssal void flame, had already grown to 2 points during the day and now to 4 after doubling. Considering the daunting 30,000-point requirement for advancement, this progress might seem negligible to others. Yet Xiang Yu understood the power of exponential growth better than most. Modest beginnings would eventually yield explosive results. His Mountain Heart scripture had nearly reached its halfway point, which his internal calculations suggested would be surpassed before the next reset. This trajectory placed him firmly on path to breakthrough to the 5th layer after the next settlement. Rather than encountering the diminishing returns common to cultivation, his advancement seemed to be accelerating as he got stronger. The knife technique was similarly approaching its halfway threshold, likely to enter great completion after the next settlement. Meanwhile, his sword technique had successfully broken through to the completion stage, resetting its progress bar in the process. His iron body technique had advanced to major success level, and the effects were immediately apparent. His skin had developed a resilience that normal weapons would struggle to penetrate. He estimated that by the time he reached completion stage, his body would indeed possess the durability of genuine iron. As for the elusive mid-grade movement technique that had defied his comprehension, he sensed he stood at the precipice of breakthrough. Just one more insight, one more connection, and the technique would finally yield its secrets. After methodically reviewing his progress, Xiang Yu summoned his complete status display. After reviewing his stats, Xiang Yu felt a deep satisfaction with his progress. His gaze lingered on his sword technique, which had reset to 0 after breakthrough. This presented a dilemma. He still wanted to advance his knife technique to great completion, but splitting his focus might slow his overall progress. Then, a realization struck him. With his newfound ability to cook spirit food, he could completely rejuvenate his energy after each meal. This changed everything. He would no longer experience diminishing returns as he trained more, since his stamina bar would be reset after each meal. This was perfect. He could now practice the knife technique during the day, and after dinner, when his energy is restored, he could then practice the sword without experiencing any loss in performance. With his strategies set, Xiang Yu considered whether to sleep. He paused, taking stock of his condition. Despite being awake for a full 24 hours, unusual for someone at the body refining stage who still required mortal necessities like food and sleep, his mind remained remarkably sharp. He wondered if his clarity was a benefit of breaking through to mind level 1. Since that was the case, then going to sleep would be a waste of valuable time, he thought, settling into the meditation position to practice the Mountain Heart Sutra. This time, he approached the practice with greater caution, placing deep emphasis on affirming his nature to resist the mental demons that had nearly claimed him before. As he settled into position, the familiar sensation began to envelop him, that seductive pull toward peaceful nothingness. Though he continued affirming his heart's desire for survival, the void's influence grew increasingly overwhelming. A flicker of concern passed through his fading consciousness as he wondered if his desires were truly so weak. The emptiness pulled him deeper and deeper until once again he floated in that state of pure existence, wanting nothing, feeling nothing, simply being. Just before he could fully surrender to the void's embrace, something extraordinary happened. Within the endless emptiness where his consciousness drifted, a flame materialized before him, the abyssal void flame. Though black as night, it somehow illuminated the surrounding darkness. Xiang Yu felt its gentle warmth caress his senses, gradually restoring his awareness. He pulled the flame toward himself with a thought, heaving a sigh of relief as his consciousness fully returned. It seems I'm still too weak to practice mind techniques safely, he acknowledged. Fortunate that I have the abyssal void flame. Otherwise, he left the thought unfinished, silently thanking his martial aunt for her timely gift. As his awareness expanded, Xiang Yu examined his surroundings. The endless dark void stretched in all directions, eerily similar to descriptions he'd heard of a spiritual sea, something typically accessible only to cultivators at the Golden Core stage. Had practicing the sutra somehow allowed him to open his spiritual sea prematurely? With a spiritual sea, he could use spiritual sense to detect things around him, allowing him to avoid ambushes. Though looking at his dark spiritual sea, he admitted that it was probably unusable as it lacked the spiritual chi required to function. Still, he recognized its potential value. With deliberate intent, he guided the flame toward his forehead. The black fire settled there, manifesting as a flaming mark that caused his entire form to glow, illuminating a small radius within the dark void. He reasoned that with a spiritual sea, even without chi to perform mental attacks or use spiritual sense, the flame could settle in there, providing protection against mental attacks when practicing mental techniques in the future or when he's attacked using mental techniques. As he closed his eyes in his spiritual sea, his physical eyes opened in the real world. The first rays of dawn were just beginning to pierce the horizon. Perfect timing. He hadn't fallen behind in his training schedule. Xiang Yu summoned his system interface to check if anything had changed after the long session. Enlightenment. Low 105/1000. Battle Instinct 45/100,000. Spirit Flame. Abyssal Void Flame. 7th grade 6/30,000. Mountain Heart Sutra. Level 1 12/1000. His eyes widened with genuine surprise. Some of his most stubborn stats had increased significantly, and without the system's doubling effect. The Mountain Heart Sutra had proven far more valuable than he'd initially realized, jumping from a mere 2 points to 12 overnight. Even his battle instinct, which had previously resisted conventional training methods, had grown by 5 points. He was very satisfied with the sutra as he studied the numbers. With the protection of the Abyssal Void Flame against mental demons, I can practice the sutra every night instead of wasting precious hours on sleep. This optimization appealed deeply to his calculating nature. 24 hours of productive cultivation per day, no moment wasted, no opportunity squandered. His path to power would accelerate even further. Xiang Yu rose from his meditation posture and made his way to the nearby lake. The cool water against his skin banished the last vestiges of mental fatigue as he methodically washed his body, preparing for the day's training. When he arrived at the training ground, Li Yao was already waiting, her slender figure silhouetted against the rising sun. They exchanged brief morning greetings before drawing their weapons. No time was wasted on idle conversation. Both went straight to sparring. As their sparring began, Xiang Yu immediately noticed the tangible improvements in his battle awareness. The prediction lines that guided his defense had grown remarkably precise. No longer the broad, hazy trajectories of before, but hair-thin indicators of exactly where and how attacks would manifest. His perception had sharpened to the point where he could discern not just the path of Li Yao's blade, but the subtle shifts in her weight distribution that telegraphed her intentions microseconds before she committed to them. More impressively, his own attacks had become ruthlessly efficient. Gone were the wasted movements and unnecessary flourishes. Each strike, each parry, each footstep served a specific purpose in his overall strategy. He applied pressure when advantage presented itself and yielded ground when tactically beneficial, never allowing pride or fear to cloud his judgment. It was as if the entire battle had transformed into an intricate game of chess, and he was somehow a master of it. Though still physically outmatched by his junior sister's raw power, his newfound tactical acumen created genuine pressure that forced her to adapt. For perhaps the first time, he wasn't merely surviving their exchanges. He was actively challenging her. Across the training ground, Li Yao observed the transformation with growing interest. Her senior brother stood in a flawless defensive stance, his posture betraying none of the hesitation that had previously characterized his fighting style. His eyes tracked her movements with predatory focus, analyzing rather than fearing. Her lazy and cowardly senior brother had evolved from someone who could barely muster the courage to counterattack into whatever this was. She released an audible sigh that carried across the training ground. The time had come to take her senior brother seriously. Continuing with her current unrefined technique would no longer provide the challenge he needed to grow. With fluid grace, Li Yao shifted her stance, adopting a sword form she rarely displayed during their practice sessions. The change was immediate and dramatic. The entire atmosphere of the battlefield seemed to transform with her. Xiang Yu felt his battle awareness tingling in response, recognizing the profound shift in danger level. Her new form embodied true mastery, the culmination of dedicated practice rather than the flawed techniques she'd been using to accommodate his lower level. As he observed her sword form, it felt like staring into an abyss with no end. Is this what perfection feels like? He wondered. Yet instead of apprehension, a rare smile spread across his face as she launched toward him with blinding speed. This escalation, this genuine pressure, was exactly what he needed to transcend his current limitations. Xiang Yu twisted away from a devastating blow that cratered the ground where he'd stood moments before. His mouth twitched as he wondered if his junior sister really had it out for him. There was no time to dwell on the thought, as another attack came whistling toward him. He rolled across the ground and immediately sprang away as her blade struck where he'd just been. His enhanced battle awareness, while impressive, seemed only sufficient for desperate evasion against Li Yao's perfected sword technique. The sheer pressure of her attacks generated what felt like a fear effect. Had it not been for his spiritual sea helping him overcome the mental barrier, he might have frozen in place completely. Despite the overwhelming odds, Xiang Yu found satisfaction in his improvement. From his assessment, his battle instinct had nearly caught up to his junior sister's level. After one more doubling, the difference would be like an adult competing against a child. Yet this didn't mean victory was within reach. Li Yao was essentially a kid wielding a gun while he remained unarmed. Though he could pressure her now, it was only because she deliberately held back her true strength. If she unleashed her full power, he wouldn't stand a chance, at least not yet. Across the training ground, Li Yao observed her senior brother dodging another precisely aimed strike. She marveled at how much he'd grown, considering she was currently using the strength of a body-refining sixth-layer cultivator combined with a perfect level sword technique, yet couldn't land a clean hit. He seemed to have adapted to her current level. With a contemplative sigh, she decided to escalate further. Without warning, she released more of her true power, elevating to the strength of a body-refining seventh-layer cultivator. As she charged towards Xiang Yu, her footwork suddenly accelerated, and she materialized before him in a blur of movement. He barely managed to block the attack, raising his knife and bracing it with his free hand. His feet dug into the ground as he absorbed the tremendous force. Recognizing the sudden increase in pressure, Xiang Yu made a split-second tactical decision. Instead of maintaining the block against her overwhelming strength, he deliberately released the tension, allowing her attack to flow toward him while he rolled to safety. Her sword plunged deep into the earth where he'd stood. Seizing the momentary opportunity, Xiang Yu sprang up and placed his knife against her exposed neck. "I win this time," he declared with uncharacteristic smugness. Li Yao rose slowly, retrieving her sword with casual grace. "Is that so?" she replied with dangerous calm. "Let's try again." The air around them seemed to shift, becoming charged with an entirely different energy. Before Xiang Yu could process what was happening, Li Yao stood directly before him. "A movement technique?" he exclaimed in shock. His realization came too late as her fist connected squarely with his abdomen, sending him flying several meters backward. Before he could regain his footing, she had already closed the distance, her sword poised at the ready, its gleaming edge promising no further mercy. Xiang Yu stared at the descending sword, his enhanced battle awareness tracking its deadly trajectory perfectly. Yet his body betrayed him. His muscles couldn't match the speed his mind demanded. As the gleaming edge closed in, mere inches from his flesh, something extraordinary happened. Suddenly, Xiang Yu found himself gazing up at the clear sky, squinting against the harsh sunlight. Confusion washed over him. What had just transpired? One moment, Li Yao's attack was inches away, and the next he was sprawled on the ground some distance away. Li Yao's face appeared above him, her silhouette blocking the sun's glare. "Senior brother, you finally mastered it," she announced, pride evident in her voice. Mastered what? He wondered aloud, his mind still reeling from the abrupt change in position. "The movement technique," she explained, her eyes bright with excitement. Confusion gave way to realization as the memory crystallized. When the sword was about to strike him, his legs had moved almost of their own accord, carrying him at a speed he could barely control. He recalled crashing into a tree, the impact knocking him to the ground where he now lay. So that's what happened. With focused intent, he summoned his status interface, eager to confirm this breakthrough. Mid-grade phantom footwork. Beginner. 5 out of 100. There was finally, after countless hours of practice and failed attempts, he had finally grasped the elusive technique. A rare sense of accomplishment warmed his chest. Though it had taken far longer than anticipated, he knew that with his system's exponential growth, mastery was now inevitable and would come swiftly. "Let's take a break," he suggested as Li Yao helped him to his feet. They sheathed their weapons and headed toward the kitchen to prepare lunch. As they walked, Xiang Yu noticed a subtle difference in his movement. Though he wasn't actively employing the phantom footwork, his legs felt more responsive, more fluid. He sensed that even if sudden danger arose, he could retreat instantly. If he developed this technique to perfection and combined it with his ever-improving battle instinct, he would never again fall to sneak attacks like he'd almost done during Gu Wuqing's ambush. In the kitchen, Xiang Yu approached his culinary duties with renewed enthusiasm. Since acquiring the spirit flame, cooking had transformed from mere necessity into a valued opportunity to practice controlling his mystical fire. As his hands moved with practiced precision, he contemplated expanding into other secondary professions. Pill refining and artifact crafting would not only develop his spiritual flame control, but would eventually allow him to create his own cultivation resources and weapons. Crucial advantages for someone determined to survive in this dangerous world. Lost in these practical considerations, he barely noticed when the meal preparation concluded. This time, only Elder Guo arrived for the meal. Noting his martial aunt's absence, Xiang Yu carefully wrapped her portion and set it aside. She had become family, after all, and her generosity in gifting him the spirit flame demanded reciprocity. The least he could do was ensure she enjoyed his spirit-infused cooking, even if delayed. After master and disciple finished their meal, Elder Guo remained seated, his expression turning solemn. "The heaven-testing pagoda is about to open," he announced, his tone causing both disciples to fall silent. Every pavilion is required to send disciples to participate. "The heaven-testing pagoda?" Li Yao asked, curiosity brightening her eyes. "Yes, it opens once every 10 years, so it makes sense you haven't heard of it," Elder Guo explained, stroking his beard thoughtfully. "It's a treasure that was discovered by the ancestor of our Azure Cloud Sword sect long ago." His voice carried a reverent tone as he continued. "As long as you complete challenges and climb, you can receive all sorts of rewards." Li Yao regarded him with skeptical eyes, her mind racing. What rewards could it possibly provide that would be worth the effort? Nothing that impressive, surely. Noticing her dubious expression, Elder Guo's eyes narrowed. "Don't look down on this treasure. This was where your martial aunt obtained her phoenix bloodline." When Li Yao heard this revelation, her perception of the pagoda transformed instantly. If it could bestow something as extraordinary as a phoenix bloodline, perhaps it truly was remarkable. Her thoughts immediately turned to her senior brother. Could she find something within the tower that might help him overcome his lack of spiritual roots? "So, are you interested in participating? It will open in about 2 weeks," Elder Guo explained, his gaze moving between his disciples. "I'll go," Li Yao responded enthusiastically, practically bouncing with excitement. "I'll just stay here and train," Xiang Yu stated flatly, his expression impassive. When Elder Guo heard this, he released a resigned sigh. He had anticipated this response, yet still harbored hope that his disciple might have changed after growing stronger. It seemed one's nature truly couldn't be altered so easily, not even through cultivation breakthroughs. Are you certain you don't want to participate? The heaven-testing pagoda is genuinely mysterious. You might even discover a solution to your spiritual root problem there, he coaxed, making one final attempt. Xiang Yu considered the offer, finding it momentarily tempting. It was inside the sect without apparent danger, and he might indeed find something beneficial there. But he wouldn't fall for this. What if he became a target for others inside? Many pavilions would likely send their elite combatants, so what could a mere body refining fourth-layer cultivator like himself possibly gain? And even if he obtained something valuable, it would inevitably attract others' jealousy. He would die without even having a burial place. Moreover, in these scenarios, strange occurrences always plague such things. What if the pagoda served as a sealing ground for demons? What if some ancient monster was using it to absorb people's energy to facilitate its revival? Xiang Yu shuddered inwardly at the possibilities. Just then, the wind intensified as Elder Huang descended gracefully from the sky. Seeing her arrival, Xiang Yu rose to his feet. The other pavilions will also send their strongest disciples, so I wouldn't be able to acquire anything worthwhile anyway, he explained as he retrieved the meal he had carefully preserved for his martial aunt. Li Yao, though disappointed that her senior brother wouldn't accompany her, acknowledged the logic in his reasoning. Even without external threats, the pagoda contained numerous unknowns. She consoled herself with the thought that she alone would suffice. She would discover enough rewards for both herself and her senior brother. Elder Huang rushed forward, her eyes falling on the cleared table. Disappointment clouded her features as she believed she had missed the opportunity for spirit food. She had been busy arranging her disciples' participation in the heaven-testing pagoda and consequently lost her chance to enjoy Xiang Yu's cooking. If only she'd known, she would have prioritized the meal. But then the fragrant aroma reached her nostrils. She turned to see Xiang Yu holding her portion with a warm smile. "Martial nephew," she exclaimed, tears glistening at the corners of her eyes, her gratitude overwhelming. In the afternoon, Xiang Yu and Li Yao resumed their rigorous practice under the warm sun. Xiang Yu struggled initially with his newly acquired phantom footwork, his movements awkward and unpredictable. Sometimes he shot forward too quickly, crashing into trees or stumbling over uneven ground. Other times, his technique failed to activate when needed, leaving him vulnerable to Li Yao's lightning-fast strikes. "Focus on your intent rather than the physical movement," Li Yao instructed, demonstrating with a fluid step that left a faint afterimage. "The technique responds to your will more than your muscles." Beads of sweat trickled down Xiang Yu's forehead as he concentrated, gradually finding the delicate mental thread that connected his intention to the technique's activation. Each successful execution built upon the last, his body slowly adapting to the unnatural speed and directional changes. Though he made progress, he still couldn't match Li Yao's astonishing velocity. She moved like a phantom herself, appearing and disappearing with such grace that it seemed effortless. This gap wasn't surprising. She had likely perfected her movement technique long ago, while he was still fumbling with the basics. Yet the overwhelming pressure served a purpose, forcing Xiang Yu to leverage his heightened battle awareness and mental clarity. Rather than relying solely on physical prowess, he developed elaborate tactics, feints within feints, calculated retreats that baited attacks, and precisely timed counterstrikes. He utilized environmental features, positioning himself to limit her approach angles and sometimes deliberately creating openings to lead her into traps. These strategies rarely succeeded completely, but each minor victory, each moment where he managed to pressure the vastly superior Li Yao, was a triumph worth celebrating. As the golden light of evening painted the sky, they paused for their customary meal. Xiang Yu prepared a sumptuous feast, channeling his abyssal void flame with improved control. The black fire danced beneath his cooking vessels, occasionally flaring with white sparks that looked like distant stars. After they had eaten and revitalized their energy with the qi-rich food, they returned to the training grounds. This time, Xiang Yu sheathed his knife and drew his sword instead, the weapon gleaming in the moonlight. The switch altered his entire fighting style: broader movements, longer reach, different balance points required. Steel sang against steel as they sparred beneath the stars, their silhouettes casting long shadows across the moonlit ground. Though his sword technique had reached completion stage, matching his knife mastery, the practical application still required different muscle memory and timing. They continued until midnight, when fatigue finally forced them to conclude. With respectful nods, they parted ways toward their separate quarters. Alone in his simple room, Xiang Yu reclined on his bed, summoning his status interface with practiced mental focus. The familiar blue glow illuminated his features as he examined the day's progress. His enlightenment doubled, getting over 100 new points. Xiang Yu experienced something transcendent. If yesterday's sensation was intense, this was an entirely different realm of perception. His consciousness seemed to explode outward, merging with the world around him. Insights about his techniques cascaded through his mind like a torrent of crystalline understanding, each concept perfectly clear, yet overwhelmingly numerous. The sensation persisted, building in intensity that threatened to overwhelm him. When it finally subsided, Xiang Yu gasped for breath, his chest heaving as though he'd run for miles. That was intense, he murmured to himself, wiping beads of sweat from his brow. A genuine concern flashed through his mind. If these doublings continued at their current pace, could his body and mind withstand such profound transformations? The enlightenment felt like trying to pour an ocean into a teacup. But just as panic threatened to overwhelm him, a sudden clarity washed through his consciousness. His racing thoughts settled into perfect order, his mind becoming as still and reflective as an undisturbed pond. This must be the effect of the doubled Mountain Heart Sutra, he realized. The mind cultivation was balancing the explosive growth of his enlightenment, providing the mental fortitude necessary to process such vast insights. The mind level is truly crucial, he thought, making a mental note to prioritize this aspect of his cultivation more. Without it, his accelerating talents might tear his consciousness apart rather than elevate it. His attention shifted to his knife technique, which had undergone its own remarkable transformation. Unlike the broad insights granted by enlightenment, these revelations focused exclusively on bladecraft, pure, concentrated understanding of the knife's every application. Memories flowed through him like a visual montage. His first awkward grip on the weapon's handle, vegetables yielding beneath its edge in the kitchen, the desperate, survival-driven slashes against Gu Wuqing's men, the more calculated exchanges with Gu Hanming's disciples, countless sparring sessions with Li Yao, and finally, that triumphant moment when he'd first managed to pressure her into a genuine defensive position. All these experiences, once separate events, now connected into a seamless understanding. This was great completion, true mastery that transcended mere mechanical skill to become intuitive expertise. Xiang Yu exhaled slowly, appreciation flowing through him. If great completion feels like this, he wondered, how profound must perfection be? His eyes found the system interface floating before him, noting the experience required for perfection was double that needed for great completion. The magnitude didn't discourage him. How could the pinnacle of mastery be easily attained? Methodically, he examined his other advancements. His cooking skill had improved marginally, offering refinements to techniques he already possessed rather than revolutionary new insights. His abyssal void flame had reached 20 points, progressing faster than initially predicted, a pleasant surprise. His battle instinct had nearly reached 100 points, though without actual combat, he couldn't fully appreciate the changes this would bring. The movement technique showed modest improvement, granting him slightly better control over its execution. His iron body technique's advancement was more tangible, He could feel his skin hardening further, developing the resilience he'd need for future conflicts. The sword technique had gained 100 points, impressive progress that confirmed the efficacy of spirit food in accelerating cultivation. At this rate, it would soon match his knife mastery at great completion. Finally, he turned his attention to the Mountain Heart scripture. Breaking through to the 5th layer of body, refining represented a significant milestone in his journey. Strength flowed through his muscles, his physical form growing more powerful with each passing moment. Xiang Yu savored this sensation of tangible growth. Satisfied by the day's progress, he summoned his complete system interface, ready to plan his next cycle of advancement. The system interface floated before Xiang Yu, its ethereal blue glow illuminating his face as he meticulously examined each statistic. Name: Xiang Yu. Realm: Body. 5th layer: Mind. Level 1. Species: Human. Spiritual root: Null. Enlightenment: Low. 214/1000. Battle instinct: 92/100,000. Spirit flame: Abyssal void flame. 7th grade: 20/30,000. Professions: Cook. 8th grade: 22/200. Techniques: mid-grade phantom footwork. Beginner: 10 out of 100. Low-grade iron body technique. Major success: 100 out of 400. Basic knife technique. Great completion: 0 out of 1000. Basic sword technique. Completion: 200 out of 500. Scriptures: Mountain Heart Scripture. 5th layer: 0/500. Mountain Heart Sutra. Level 1, 24/1000. System function: double EXP. Cooldown: 24 hours. Satisfaction flickered across his face as he observed his growth. Just as the previous evening, Xiang Yu decided to practice the Mountain Heart Sutra rather than waste precious hours on sleep. He settled into the lotus position, his back perfectly straight as he regulated his breathing. His consciousness gradually detached from physical sensation, drawing inward until he found himself once again in the boundless void of his spiritual sea. Unlike his earlier experiences, the seductive pull toward peaceful non-existence no longer threatened to consume him. The abyssal void flame still burned steadily on his spiritual forehead, illuminating the darkness around him with its strange black radiance punctuated by tiny white sparks like distant stars. The flame's presence anchored his awareness, protecting him from the mental demons that had nearly claimed him before. Throughout the night, Xiang Yu cultivated within this protected space, gradually expanding his mental strength. The flame occasionally pulsed as if responding to his progress, its white sparks growing momentarily more numerous before settling back into their regular pattern. Time held no meaning in this state. What felt like minutes within his spiritual sea translated to hours in the physical world. Dawn's first light was filtering through his window when Xiang Yu's eyes finally opened. He felt refreshed despite not having slept, his mind sharper than ever before. Curious about his overnight progress, he summoned his system interface once more. Enlightenment: Low. 216/1000. Battle instinct: 96/100,000. Spirit flame: Abyssal void flame. 7th grade: 22/30,000. Mountain Heart Sutra. Level 1, 30/1000. The gains are modest but significant, particularly the battle instinct that now stood at the precipice of crossing into triple digits. Satisfied, he closed the interface and prepared for the day's training. At the usual training ground, Li Yao was already waiting, her slender form silhouetted against the morning sun. They exchanged brief greetings, neither wasting time on idle conversation when cultivation beckoned. Xiang Yu drew his knife, the weapon feeling like a natural extension of his arm. Across from him, Li Yao prepared her sword form, her movements flowing with elegance. The mere sight of her perfected technique generated a pressure that rippled through the air, creating an invisible but tangible aura of danger. He exhaled slowly, deliberately calming his nerves as his eyes locked onto her with predatory focus. His stance shifted subtly, muscle memory from countless hours of practice, positioning his body for optimal response. Without realizing it, his own battle instinct, nearly 100 points now, began to manifest as an aura of its own, projecting deadly intent. When Li Yao saw Xiang Yu's stance, she froze momentarily, her confident expression faltering. What was that? She wondered. She felt as though she had encountered a wild beast. This senior brother right now was a whole different monster compared to before. The way he looked at her, she felt as though his gaze penetrated through her. Get yourself together. The Empress's voice snapped within her mind, pulling her back to reality. The oppressive feeling had diminished slightly when she refocused, but hadn't disappeared completely. What was that just now? She silently asked. The Empress released a contemplative sigh. It's called battle intent. People who have experienced countless battles hone their battle intent. At some point, battle intent can become so great that it can kill you just by glancing at you. Li Yao absorbed this explanation with growing astonishment. How could her senior brother possess such formidable battle intent already? She acknowledged his rapid advancement, but wasn't this progression unnaturally swift? Even she, acknowledged as a genius, felt her own progress seemed sluggish in comparison. It seems your senior brother is a combat genius, the Empress explained with admiration. This is actually beneficial for you. Having encountered someone with such strong battle intent early in your cultivation, you can use him to hone your own resistance, so you won't be paralyzed by fear when facing truly fearsome opponents. Li Yao took a deep, centering breath, closing her eyes to steady herself. When her eyelids finally lifted, she charged forward without hesitation, her blade gleaming in the morning light as it sought her suddenly formidable senior brother. Speedrunning to perfection. Li Yao charged toward Xiang Yu, her perfect level movement technique propelling her with breathtaking speed. Her sword arced downward in a gleaming silver blur, sunlight dancing along its edge. To her surprise, Xiang Yu blocked the strike with remarkable ease, his knife intercepting her blade with precision timing. In the same fluid motion, he countered, his other fist shooting toward her lower abdomen. Not with the hesitation that once characterized his movements, but with deadly intent. Li Yao's eyes widened as she instinctively leaped backward. Though his fist hadn't connected, she felt the rush of displaced air against her robes, the power behind the strike sending tremors up her sword arm through their connected blades. He's broken through again, she realized, her mind quickly processing this development. The realization crystallized. If she continued holding back to her current level, she might actually find herself at a disadvantage against her formerly timid senior brother. Within a heartbeat, Li Yao made her decision. Power surged through her meridians as she released another portion of her cultivation, activating body, refining eighth layer. The change was immediate and dramatic. Her movements accelerated, her techniques executed with greater force and precision. The overwhelming battle intent emanating from Xiang Yu diminished considerably against her elevated power, though she could still detect its presence faintly. Their weapons clashed with renewed vigor, each exchange creating shockwaves that rustled nearby leaves. Steel sang against steel as they pushed each other to new limits, neither yielding ground despite the escalating intensity. Only when the sun reached its zenith did they finally pause, acknowledging it was time for their midday meal. Together they walked toward the kitchen, their breathing controlled despite the hours of exertion. Xiang Yu prepared lunch with practiced efficiency, his movements in the kitchen as precise as his blade work on the training ground. The spirit-infused meal rejuvenated them both, chi flowing through their meridians, repairing subtle fatigue and restoring depleted energy. After eating, they returned to the training ground without delay, resuming their relentless practice. The afternoon sun traced its arc across the azure sky as they continued their dance of blades, each exchange building upon lessons from the previous. Only when dusk painted the horizon in hues of amber and gold did they pause for their evening meal. With energies refreshed from another spirit-infused dinner, Xiang Yu exchanged his knife for his sword. The weapon gleamed in the moonlight as he settled into a different stance, his muscles adjusting to the altered balance and reach. Li Yao nodded in approval, immediately adapting her own approach to challenge this variation in his technique. Beneath the vast canopy of stars, they continued their rigorous training, their silhouettes casting long shadows across the moonlit ground. Each strike, each parry, each footstep served to refine their skills until midnight finally signaled the end of their session. With respectful nods, they parted ways toward their separate quarters. Alone in his simple room, Xiang Yu reclined on his bed, summoning his status interface with practiced mental focus. The familiar blue glow illuminated his features as he examined the day's progress. Enlightenment, low, 216/1000, plus 2/1000. Battle instinct, 96/100,000, plus 4/100,000. Spirit flame, abyssal void flame, 7th grade, 22/30,000, plus 2/30,000. Mountain Heart Sutra, level 1, 30/1000, plus 6/1000. Mountain Heart Scripture, 5th layer, 30/500, plus 30/500. Mid-grade Phantom Footwork, beginner, 20/100, plus 10/100. Low-grade Iron Body Technique, major success, 200/400, plus 100/400. Basic Knife Technique, great completion, 50/1000, plus 50/1000. Basic Sword Technique, completion, 300/500, plus 100/500. Cook, 8th grade, 26/200, plus 4/200. Experience points doubled. Cook, 8th grade, 26/200, 8th grade, 52/200. Basic Sword Technique, completion, 300/500, great completion, 0/1000. Basic Knife Technique, great completion, 50/1000, great completion, 100/1000. Low-grade Iron Body Technique, major success, 200/400, completion, 0/500. Mid-grade Phantom Footwork, beginner, 20/100, beginner, 40/100. Mountain Heart Scripture, 5th layer, 30/500, 5th layer, 60/500. Mountain Heart Sutra, level 1, 30/1000, level 1, 60/1000. Spirit Flame, Abyssal Void Flame, 7th grade, 22/30,000, 7th grade, 44/30,000. Battle Instinct, 96/100,000, 192/100,000. Enlightenment, low, 216/1000, low, 432/1000. The wave of enlightenment crashed over Xiang Yu with unprecedented intensity, like a great dam shattering under immense pressure. Unlike previous doublings, this one unleashed a torrent of insights that threatened to drown his consciousness entirely. Thousands of revelations about his techniques materialized simultaneously in his mind, each one blindingly clear, yet overwhelming in their collective brilliance. The mental deluge persisted longer than ever before, washing through every corner of his awareness. Xiang Yu clutched his head, not from pain, but from the sheer magnitude of understanding flooding his mind. Just as he feared being swept away by this current of revelations, a sudden clarity spread throughout his consciousness, the Mountain Heart Sutra asserting its stabilizing influence. The chaotic rush of insights began organizing themselves, each finding its proper place in the architecture of his understanding. He exhaled deeply, his breath shaky from the intensity of the experience. 432 points, he whispered to himself, genuine concern creeping into his thoughts. If this doubling had been this overwhelming, how would he possibly handle the next one when it exceeded 800 points? He could only hope that the Mountain Heart Sutra would be able to handle it. Before he could dwell further on this concern, a second wave of understanding washed over him as his sword technique reached great completion. The insights arrived with precision rather than chaos, each building upon the last to form a coherent whole. Unlike his knife technique, which had reached this stage earlier, the sword revelations carried different nuances. The blade's greater reach, its weight distribution, the arc of its swing, all requiring distinct approaches from knife combat. Patterns emerged in his mind about how to transition seamlessly between the two weapons, exploiting the unique advantages of each. These reflections were interrupted by his cooking skill doubling. Unlike previous culinary advancements, which merely refined existing techniques, this brought entirely new dimensions to his understanding. Methods for manipulating qi and spirit flames during food preparation materialized in his mind. He suddenly comprehended dozens of specialized spirit food recipes, each designed for specific purposes: gathering qi, accelerating healing, replenishing stamina, enhancing strength, sharpening mental clarity, and many more. His newfound flame control techniques would allow him to create dishes tailored to cultivators at different realms, maximizing their benefit from his creations. With his battle intent doubling registered, a fierce pride swelled within him. The attribute had leaped from respectable to formidable in a single bound, now standing at an impressive 192 points. He remembered that he seemed to have surpassed Li Yao's battle intent. Now that it had doubled once again, he wondered just how huge the difference would be. From what he had seen, the attribute seemed more useful than he'd initially thought. Despite Li Yao overwhelming him in raw power, cultivation level, and literal perfection, his battle awareness had allowed him to anticipate her movements and respond effectively. If he could maximize this stat, pushing it to its full potential, he would definitely be invincible in the same realm. Who knows, he might even be able to challenge higher realms like the so-called geniuses. His spirit flame had doubled to 44 points, though the practical benefits remained subtle for now. More immediately tangible was his iron body technique reaching completion stage. He ran a hand along his forearm, marveling at the transformation. His skin had hardened significantly, now genuinely comparable to iron in its durability. Common weapons would struggle to penetrate this natural armor, providing crucial protection in future conflicts. The phantom footwork improvement manifested as enhanced control rather than new insights. Though still at the beginner stage, he could feel his mastery deepening with each practice. The technique responded more readily to his intentions, requiring less conscious effort to activate. He anticipated a significant speed increase once it reached minor success, further enhancing his survivability. After methodically analyzing each advancement, Xiang Yu called forth his complete status display. The blue glow of the status interface bathed Xiang Yu's face as he carefully examined his progress. Name: Xiang Yu. Realm: Body. 5th layer. Mind: Level 1. Species: Human. Spiritual root: Null. Enlightenment: Low, 432/1000. Battle instinct: 192/100,000. Spirit flame: Abyssal void flame. 7th grade, 44/30,000. Professions: Cook. 8th grade, 52 out of 200. Techniques: Mid-grade phantom footwork. Beginner, 40/100. Low-grade iron body technique. Completion, 0/500. Basic knife technique. Great completion, 100/1000. Basic sword technique. Great completion, 0/1000. Scriptures: Mountain Heart Scripture. 5th layer, 65/500. Mountain Heart Sutra. Level 1, 60/1000. System function: double EXP. Cooldown: 24 hours. He noted with a hint of disappointment that despite his knife technique advancing to the great completion stage, the experience exchange rate remained stubbornly fixed at 10-1. The Mountain Heart Scripture's breakthrough to the 5th layer had effectively maintained the status quo. Still, not everything was bleak. His sword technique had also reached great completion, providing another powerful tool for farming experience points. This dual mastery would accelerate his path to the 6th stage of body refining. Of course, he realized this advantage had a built-in expiration date. Once he reached the perfect stage in both techniques, the experience exchange would become obsolete. Well, it was nice while it lasted, he thought. Without wasting another moment, Xiang Yu closed the system interface and assumed his meditation position, ready to train the Mountain Heart Sutra. The transition into his spiritual sea happened instantly, as if his consciousness had been eagerly waiting for this moment. Upon arrival, something immediately caught his attention. The endless void surrounding him wasn't entirely dark anymore. A small radius around his form glowed with a gentle brightness that couldn't be attributed to his spirit flame. This subtle illumination seemed to be emerging from the void itself, distinct from the black flame's otherworldly light. Xiang Yu wondered if this transformation resulted from the sutra's 30-point improvement overnight. His knowledge about spiritual seas remained rudimentary at best. Snippets gleaned from overheard conversations and fragmentary texts. Perhaps the next doubling would trigger another major change, possibly unlocking new abilities. But he didn't have time for such thoughts at the moment. He continued cultivating the sutra with dedicated focus until dawn finally colored the eastern sky. As sunlight filtered through his window, Xiang Yu opened his eyes and performed a series of careful stretches to loosen his body after the long period of stillness. Choosing to cultivate the sutra instead of sleeping had proven remarkably effective. Not only did it help him process the overwhelming flood of enlightenment, but it also granted him extraordinary mental clarity, far beyond what even 10 hours of restful sleep could provide. After each cultivation session, his mind reached a state of peak performance, thoughts crystallizing with perfect clarity. For a brief moment, he considered dedicating himself entirely to sutra practice, abandoning his physical training regimen. The thought was tempting, but ultimately impractical. Mental cultivation alone wouldn't provide the raw strength needed to survive in this dangerous world. With reluctance, he dismissed these wishful musings. Curious about his overnight progress, Xiang Yu summoned his status display. Enlightenment. Low 435/1000. Battle Instinct 195/100,000. Spirit Flame. Abyssal Void Flame. 7th grade 45/30,000. Mountain Heart Sutra. Level 1. 80/1000. Though the improvements appeared modest at first glance, they represented progress in his most stubborn attributes. One was a natural treasure, another reflected innate talent, and the third typically required countless life-or-death battles to develop. The sutra's ability to advance these seemingly immovable stats spoke volumes about its extraordinary value. Xiang Yu felt a surge of gratitude toward his master for providing such a precious technique. The sutra itself had advanced by 20 points, its largest single-session improvement yet. Puzzling over this unexpected leap, Xiang Yu suddenly realized the cause. His enlightenment had doubled from the 200s to the 400s. As a meditation scripture that relied solely on mental clarity rather than physical exertion, the sutra's effectiveness scaled directly with enlightenment levels. This revelation carried profound implications. When his enlightenment doubled again, the sutra might gain 40 points or more in a single session. More importantly, he recognized that his mind level had become his most critical stat, even more vital than his cultivation realm. If his mental capacity couldn't keep pace with his exponentially growing enlightenment, the consequences could be catastrophic. Fortunately, his mind cultivation was advancing steadily. He could face the future with cautious optimism. Dismissing these reflections, Xiang Yu focused on the day ahead. Training time was precious, and he wouldn't waste a moment of it. After a quick morning bath, he headed straight for the training grounds, ready to push his newly enhanced capabilities to their limits. Despite his sword technique's progress bar sitting at 0 after reaching great completion, Xiang Yu chose to begin with knife practice as always. His reasoning was sound. The techniques shared fundamental principles, and if his knife technique advanced far enough, his sword technique could benefit from these insights, essentially borrowing success from its more developed counterpart. As he squared off against Li Yao on the training ground, Xiang Yu immediately noticed something different. His battle awareness, now nearly 200 points strong, completely outmatched his junior sisters. The prediction lines in his mind showed her movements with crystal clarity, allowing him to anticipate her attacks with unprecedented precision. For the first time, he managed to land several solid hits on her, a feat that would have seemed impossible just days ago. Though these strikes carried little force against her superior cultivation, they represented a significant milestone. In Xiang Yu's practical mind, dealing damage wasn't the primary goal. The ability to land hits meant he could escape safely when necessary, which aligned perfectly with his survival-focused nature. They continued their rigorous training throughout the day, pausing only for meals. Each spirit-infused dish Xiang Yu prepared not only restored their energy, but accelerated their cultivation, allowing them to maintain peak performance despite the intensive regimen. When evening fell after dinner, Xiang Yu finally sheathed his knife and drew his sword. Though the weapon had already reached great completion, progress came more easily than expected. The insights from his knife technique transferred naturally to swordplay, creating a synergy that enhanced his advancement. Despite the different weight distribution and reach, the fundamental principles of combat remained consistent across both weapons. Their training continued until midnight, when both disciples finally acknowledged the need for rest. With respectful nods, they bid each other good night and headed to their separate quarters. In her private room, Li Yao removed her training garments. Rather than taking a conventional bath, she channeled her qi to cleanse her body completely. At her advanced cultivation level, mortal bathing methods were unnecessary. Only springs with enhancement properties would provide meaningful benefits. For routine cleansing, qi purification proved more efficient and consumed less time. After donning fresh robes, she settled into her meditation posture, reflecting on her progress. Her advancement was proceeding more smoothly than anticipated, largely thanks to her senior brother's spirit-infused meals. She calculated that she would soon break through to the second layer of core formation realm. Her body cultivation likewise showed promising development, requiring just another week or two of dedicated practice. Li Yao set ambitious goals for herself. By the time the Heaven Testing Pagoda opened, she intended to reach the third layer of core formation, break through to the 16th level of body refining, and perfect her spell technique. With these achievements secured, she planned to depart from the sect immediately after the Heaven Testing Pagoda event to search for the rebirth pill, the one treasure that might grant her beloved senior brother the spiritual roots he lacked. As usual, Xiang Yu braced himself for the enlightenment increase. When it hit, his mind exploded with an intense wave of insights washing through his consciousness. Insights into various techniques flooded in, not just isolated understanding, but intricate connections between them, revealing combinations and applications he'd never considered before. Though the sensation was magnitudes more intense than previous experiences, it didn't last as long as he'd anticipated. His earlier practice with the Mountain Heart Sutra had apparently strengthened his mental capacity. He could now contain this torrent of understanding, though just barely. The enlightenment wave pulsed in diminishing waves until it finally subsided completely. Xiang Yu heaved a sigh of relief as he examined his status. Looking at the numbers, he realized his next doubling would finally transform his natural talent from low to mid, crossing a threshold that many cultivators never achieved in their lifetime. Though it appeared to be a mere 200-point gap, it represented a fundamental transformation of his potential. For others, this barrier might be insurmountable, but his system guaranteed the breakthrough. The next wave brought insights into cooking. New recipes materialized in his mind alongside techniques for manipulating spirit flames with greater precision. He even glimpsed special recipes designed to assist with cultivation breakthroughs, dishes that could nourish the mind and soul. These were merely rudimentary fragments, though. He guessed they were hints of what 7th grade cooking might entail. His current skill had already passed the halfway point, virtually guaranteeing advancement to 7th grade after the next reset. His battle intent had seen a remarkable jump, climbing to nearly 400 points. Before, he could already predict Li Yao's attacks with impressive accuracy, but now that this attribute had doubled, he wondered if he might genuinely glimpse the future during combat. He set this speculation aside for the moment. He would discover the full extent of these enhancements in actual battle. Turning his attention to his spirit flame, he noted it had almost reached the 100-point mark. Strangely, he couldn't detect any dramatic changes beyond improved control. The abyssal void flame no longer felt foreign to him. It responded to his will with increasing fluidity. Perhaps significant transformations would only manifest when the flame advanced in rank. Yesterday's enlightenment increase had catalyzed major improvements across his techniques. His knife proficiency had increased by 100 points, sword by 120, and iron body technique by another 100. The phantom footwork had improved more modestly, gaining only 30 points. Unsurprising for a mid-level technique. After doubling, it had broken through to the minor success stage. Though he couldn't test it immediately, he sensed a fundamental transformation in the technique and made a mental note to explore these changes during tomorrow's practice. His scriptures showed substantial progress. The Mountain Heart Sutra had improved dramatically, already reaching the hundreds. The Mountain Heart Scripture had advanced even further. With both sword and knife techniques at great completion, they had contributed a combined 22 points to the scripture, even with the 10-to-1 conversion rate. After doubling, the scripture stood just shy of the halfway mark. He expected to make up the difference during tomorrow's training, which would advance him to the 6th layer of body refining after reset. Though his progress seemed to accelerate, he couldn't help but feel concerned about an imminent slowdown. Once he reached the 6th layer, he wouldn't be able to translate experience efficiently from his current techniques. Feeling satisfied nonetheless with his advancement, he summoned his complete status screen. Name: Xiang Yu. Realm: Body, 5th layer. Mind: Level 1. Species: Human. Spiritual root: Null. Enlightenment: Low, 870/1000. Battle instinct: 390/100,000. Spirit flame: Abyssal void flame, 7th grade, 90/30,000. Professions: Cook, 8th grade, 114 out of 200. Techniques: mid-grade phantom footwork. Minor success, 0/200. Low-grade iron body technique. Completion, 200/500. Basic knife technique. Great completion, 400/1000. Basic sword technique. Great completion, 240/1000. Scriptures: Mountain Heart Scripture, 5th layer, 266/500. Mountain Heart Sutra. Level 1, 160/1000. System function: double EXP, cooldown, 24 hours. Examining the numbers closely, Xiang Yu realized something he'd almost overlooked. His double knife and sword techniques had already transferred their experience to the Mountain Heart Scripture. The two weapon techniques had contributed a combined total of 32 points, pushing the scripture's total to 266, well beyond the halfway mark. This guaranteed his breakthrough to the 6th layer of body refining after tomorrow's doubling. A rare smile of satisfaction crossed his face as he studied his progress, particularly in the attributes that had proven most resistant to conventional training methods. His enlightenment approached the threshold for advancement to mid-level. His battle instinct had surged to nearly 400 points, and his spirit flame steadily climbed toward its first 100. Much of this accelerated growth could be attributed to the Mountain Heart Sutra. A technique that initially seemed dangerous had proven invaluable to his exponential advancement. Speaking of which, it was time for his nightly practice. Xiang Yu settled into his meditation posture, back perfectly straight, hands resting lightly on his knees. As he regulated his breathing and focused his mind, the transition happened instantly. His consciousness pulled into his spiritual sea without the gradual detachment he'd experienced in earlier sessions. Within this internal void, he noticed the illuminated radius around him had expanded significantly. The darkness receded further with each practice session, replaced by that gentle ambient light that seemed to emanate from the void itself. Though he still hadn't discovered how to utilize this phenomenon, he sensed its importance to his future cultivation. For now, he would continue cultivating patiently, trusting that understanding would come in due time. Xiang Yu maintained his deep meditation until the first light of dawn crept through his window. As consciousness flowed back into his physical form, his eyes opened slowly, adjusting to the gentle illumination of early morning. Golden rays had just begun to stretch across the horizon, painting the edges of his simple room with warm hues. With practiced mental focus, he summoned his system interface to assess his overnight progress. Enlightenment. Low 871/1000. Battle Instinct. 392/100,000. Spirit Flame. Abyssal Void Flame. 7th grade. 91/30,000. Mountain Heart Sutra. Level 1. 190/1000. His enlightenment and battle instinct were proving increasingly resistant to improvement, yet even this gradual progression impressed him. Most cultivators would struggle to advance these attributes at all, particularly at such high levels. With enlightenment already well beyond its halfway point, he felt little concern about its slower pace. The inevitable breakthrough to mid-level was virtually guaranteed. His battle instinct continued its steady climb toward the thousands, a milestone that would transform his combat capabilities in ways he could scarcely imagine. The Abyssal Void Flame showed modest improvement as well, but he didn't think much of it as he could enhance it later during his daily cooking sessions. Most striking was the Mountain Heart Sutra's 30-point increase, a remarkable achievement for a single night's practice. Satisfied with his progress, Xiang Yu rose from his meditation posture. His muscles had remained motionless for hours, yet he felt no stiffness or discomfort. Still, he performed a series of deliberate stretches, preparing his body for the rigorous training ahead. Once properly loosened, he departed for the familiar training ground. The two disciples arrived simultaneously, exchanging brief morning greetings before drawing their weapons. As they settled into their respective stances, Li Yao felt a palpable wave of pressure emanating from her senior brother. His battle intent had intensified overnight, creating an almost physical force that pushed against her senses. But something else caught her attention, a subtle quality in his knife technique that hadn't been present before. It was the feeling of perfection. Li Yao couldn't help but marvel at his progress. Though he wasn't there yet, she could feel that her senior brother was about to perfect a technique. Their weapons clashed in a deadly dance of steel, each strike and parry flowing with increased precision. As they sparred, Xiang Yu found himself puzzled. Despite his battle intent doubling overnight, he hadn't experienced the dramatic enhancement he'd anticipated. Where was the precognition he'd hoped might manifest? The ability to glimpse future attacks before they occurred? He deflected another of Li Yao's lightning-fast strikes, his mind analyzing possible explanations. Perhaps his cultivation level remained too low to fully harness his battle-intense potential. The attribute itself might be advancing normally, but his physical form and spiritual foundation couldn't fully express its capabilities yet. This theory made sense. Many cultivation attributes only revealed their true power once the practitioner reached appropriate realms. Still, even without precognition, his combat awareness continued to sharpen. Prediction lines formed with greater clarity in his mind, his responses becoming more fluid, more instinctive with each exchange. Though he couldn't yet access battle intent's full potential, its benefits remained substantial and immediate. They continued their rigorous practice until the sun reached its zenith, signaling the lunch hour's arrival. Both disciples lowered their weapons simultaneously, acknowledging the time to replenish their energies had come. After savoring the delicious spirit-infused lunch that Xiang Yu had prepared, a meal that rejuvenated their bodies and replenished their qi, the two disciples returned to the training ground with renewed vigor. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the worn earth as they resumed their relentless sparring, steel meeting steel in a symphony of controlled violence. Hours melted away beneath the azure sky until evening descended, prompting another brief respite for dinner. When they emerged once more into the moonlit training area, Xiang Yu made his customary switch from knife to sword. As the gleaming blade settled comfortably in his grip when he held the sword, he noticed something remarkable. His swordsmanship no longer lagged significantly behind his knife technique. Usually, when he wielded the sword, he would feel the slight difference in mastery between the two. But now each movement flowed with similar precision, each strike carrying comparable intent. While his extraordinary battle awareness certainly contributed to this balance, the true cause was simpler. His sword technique had genuinely caught up to his knife mastery. Across the training ground, Li Yao observed this transformation with widening eyes. The same subtle quality she'd sensed in his knife work now emanated from his sword form, though slightly fainter, a sense of harmony that approached true perfection. A realization struck her. Her senior brother was on the verge of perfecting not one, but two combat techniques simultaneously. With such mastery coupled with his uncanny battle awareness, she guessed that her senior brother would probably be invincible below the qi refining realm, unless his opponent was one of those rare monsters who had cultivated body refining to extraordinary heights. The two continued their rigorous practice until midnight finally compelled them to part ways. Alone in his quarters, Xiang Yu settled onto his simple bed, observing the day's progress. Enlightenment. Low 871/1000 plus 1/1000. Battle instinct. 392/100 000 plus 2/100 000. Spirit flame. Abyssal void flame. 7th grade. 91/30 000 plus 1/30 000. Mountain Heart Sutra. Level 1. 190/1000 plus 30/1000. Mountain Heart Scripture. 5th layer. 318/500 plus 84/500. Mid-grade Phantom Footwork. Minor success. 40/200 plus 40/200. Low-grade Iron Body Technique. Completion. 300/500 plus 100/500. Basic Knife Technique. Great completion. 500/1000 plus 100/1000. Basic Sword Technique. Great completion. 360/1000 plus 120/1000. Cook. 8th grade. 118 to 200 plus 4/200. Experience points doubled. Cook. 8th grade. 118 to 200. 7th grade. 0/300. Basic Sword Technique. Great completion. 360/1000. Great completion. 720/1000. Basic Knife Technique. Great completion. 500/1000. Perfect. Low-grade Iron Body Technique. Completion. 300/500. Great completion. 0/1000. Mid-grade Phantom Footwork. Minor success. 40 out of 200. Minor success. 80 out of 200. Mountain Heart Scripture. 5th layer. 318/500. 6th layer. 0/600. Mountain Heart Sutra. Level 1. 190/1000. Level 1. 380/1000. Spirit Flame. Abyssal Void Flame. 7th grade. 91/30 000. 7th grade. 182/30 000. Battle Instinct. 392/100 000. 784/100 000. Enlightenment. Low 871/1000. Mid 0/2000. Xiang Yu clutched his head as an overwhelming torrent of enlightenment flooded his mind. Though only 200 points separated him from the next stage, these final points felt more significant than all his previous gains combined. Thousands of insights flowed into his consciousness, creating the sensation that his brain was expanding, contracting, and contorting in impossible ways. The intensity threatened to completely overwhelm him. Usually by this point, the stabilizing effect of his sutra would have tempered the experience, but this time was different. Though his sutra momentarily cleared his mind, the sheer volume of insights instantly submerged his consciousness once again. The sensation persisted far longer than ever before. Hours seemed to pass, then days, then weeks. Time had lost all meaning as the storm of revelations continued unabated. When the tempest finally subsided, he exhaled deeply, surprised to find it was still night. Despite feeling as though countless ages had passed, not much time seemed to have passed in the physical world. As the intense pressure receded, it left behind a crystalline clarity unlike anything he'd experienced before. His mind felt completely transformed, as though his old consciousness had been replaced with something new and vastly superior. Was this what improving a natural talent felt like? His comprehension had finally ascended to the mid-level. Though the advancement had been agonizing, the results were unquestionably worth the suffering. With merely low-level comprehension, he had achieved a perfect technique in less than a month, an extraordinary feat by any standard. The possibilities with mid-level comprehension seemed limitless, filling him with genuine excitement. Following this transformation came another wave of insights, less overwhelming but still profound. His cooking skill had advanced from 8th grade to 7th grade, flooding his mind with new knowledge, chi manipulation techniques, methods for controlling spirit flames with greater precision, novel recipes, and refinements to existing approaches. Everything he knew about cooking had been elevated to a higher tier. He sensed that his culinary creations would now provide even greater benefits when consumed, though he would need to test this tomorrow to know by how much exactly. Curiously, his spirit fire no longer seemed to improve from his cooking practice. Still, with the substantial points still available for doubling, he wasn't concerned. Besides, now that his cooking had broken through to a new grade, this might change. A final insight materialized in his mind, clearer, more focused than the others. He saw himself standing, knife in hand, executing a single downward slash. No unnecessary movements, no elaborate flourishes, just a pure, perfect strike. This was true perfection. Opening his eyes, Xiang Yu marveled at this newfound mastery. Even without holding a knife, he could sense the flawless quality of his technique. No testing was necessary. He simply knew. His other techniques had advanced significantly as well. His sword mastery stood at the threshold of perfection, requiring just one more push to cross that boundary. His iron body technique had begun its journey toward perfection, and he could already feel the dramatic increase in his body's durability. Not just his skin, but his internal organs were being reinforced, growing stronger by the moment. He wondered with genuine curiosity how powerful his physical form would become once this technique reached perfection. The phantom footwork had progressed through nearly half of the minor success stage. At this pace, it would surpass the halfway mark before the next settlement. His scriptures showed remarkable development as well. The sutra had gained almost 200 points and wasn't that far off from the halfway point, putting mind level 2 within reach. Most significantly, the Mountain Heart scripture had advanced to the 6th layer, triggering a corresponding breakthrough in his body refining realm. The speed of his progress was truly astonishing. He hadn't even had time to fully appreciate his 5th layer strength before advancing further. He could feel his body actively growing stronger with each passing moment. Deeply satisfied with the day's achievements, he summoned his complete status display. Name: Xiang Yu. Realm: Body. 6th layer: Mind. Level 1. Species: Human. Spiritual root: Null. Enlightenment: Mid 0/2000. Battle instinct: 784/100,000. Spirit Flame, Abyssal Void Flame, 7th grade, 182/30,000. Professions, Cook, 7th grade, 0 out of 300. Techniques, mid-grade Phantom Footwork, minor success, 80/200. Low-grade Iron Body Technique, great completion, 0/1000. Basic Knife Technique, perfect. Basic Sword Technique, great completion, 720/1000. Scriptures, Mountain Heart Scripture, 6th layer, 0/600. Mountain Heart Sutra, level 1, 380/1000. System function, double EXP, cooldown, 24 hours. A surge of pride welled up within Xiang Yu as he admired the perfect status of his knife technique. After admiring his stats for several minutes, savoring each advancement, he decided it was time to practice the Mountain Heart Sutra. Though he had no clock, Xiang Yu could estimate the time by checking the countdown until his next settlement. From what he could tell, 2 hours had already elapsed. His enlightenment breakthrough to mid-level had consumed far more time than anticipated. The memory of that overwhelming torrent of insights sent a chill down his spine. If advancing from low to mid-enlightenment had been this dangerous, what might happen when he eventually progressed to high level? The thought reinforced his determination to prioritize his mind cultivation, creating the mental fortitude necessary to withstand future breakthroughs. Without further deliberation, he assumed his meditation posture, back straight, hands resting lightly on his knees. The moment he closed his eyes and regulated his breathing, his consciousness flowed smoothly into his spiritual sea, the transition now happening in an instant. Upon arrival, he immediately noticed the illuminated area within his spiritual sea had expanded once again, this time considerably pushing the darkness further toward the periphery. The gentle ambient light that emanated from the void itself now encompassed a much larger radius around him. Though this phenomenon intrigued him, he remained focused on his cultivation rather than investigating the change. With the abyssal void flame burning steadily on his spiritual forehead, protecting him from mental demons, he immersed himself completely in the sutra's practice. The flame's black radiance, punctuated by tiny white sparks like distant stars, cast a protective aura that allowed him to explore the depths of meditation without fear of being consumed by the void. Time lost all meaning as he remained in this profound state of cultivation, only returning to physical awareness when the first light of dawn filtered through his window. After stretching his body to dispel any lingering stiffness, he eagerly summoned his system interface to review the night's progress. The stats had increased modestly. Though not the most substantial growth, Xiang Yu felt satisfied, particularly with his enlightenment gaining a single point. This meant he would have something to double after the system reset. Without anything to double, the system's primary advantage would be wasted. Now he could breathe easier knowing progress had been made. As for the Mountain Heart Sutra itself, it had only increased by 20 points, likely because he devoted less time to it after spending 2 hours on his enlightenment breakthrough. Xiang Yu stepped outside his dwelling and inhaled deeply, savoring the crisp morning air that filled his lungs. Truly refreshing. He made his way to the nearby river, eager to wash away the sweat and fatigue from yesterday's training and begin the day anew. After he was done, he headed to the training grounds where Li Yao awaited. They exchanged customary greetings before assuming their sparring positions. This time, however, Xiang Yu didn't reach for his knife, as usual. Instead, he drew his sword. This deliberate change came because his knife technique had already reached perfection, and practicing it further would be pointless. He noted that it didn't even show a progress bar anymore. It made more sense to focus on advancing his sword skills. Not using the knife anymore? Li Yao asked, visibly surprised by the deviation from his established routine. She had grown accustomed to Xiang Yu's training regimen. Knife practice in the morning followed by sword work in the evening. My knife technique reached the perfect level yesterday, so I'll focus on the sword instead, he explained matter-of-factly. Upon hearing this, Li Yao's eyes widened momentarily before she composed herself. As expected of senior brother, she murmured with acceptance. Without further ceremony, the two began their sparring session. As their weapons clashed, Xiang Yu contemplated his next move in cultivation. Now that he had mastered one technique to perfection, he could finally approach martial Ant Huang for more teachings. What technique should he request next? Lost in these thoughts, he narrowly parried another of Li Yao's strikes, stepping backward to create distance between them. Li Yao, ever persistent, pressed her advantage and surged forward. But Xiang Yu had anticipated this response. When she expected him to dodge as usual, he instead charged forward to meet her, employing the enhanced speed granted by his phantom footwork technique. The unexpected counter startled Li Yao, disrupting her rhythm. Uncertain how to respond, she instinctively closed her eyes, bracing herself for the impact of his strike. Instead, she felt a gentle flick against her forehead. "Ah!" she exclaimed, eyes flying open to find Xiang Yu smiling down at her. "Don't close your eyes in battle," he admonished, echoing the very advice she had once given him. Li Yao's lips formed a small pout as she realized her senior brother had grown stronger and was now confident enough to tease her during training. As they reset their stances to continue, Li Yao's expression grew serious. She would not let him bully her again. She channeled her power, escalating to the body, refining ninth layer. After releasing her ninth layer of body refining, Li Yao felt a remarkable lightness throughout her body. The channeled power transformed her movements, making her feel weightless yet powerful. She was finally fighting Xiang Yu with genuine pressure, though not completely overwhelming him as she once could. For that level of dominance, she would need to unleash even more of her strength. Xiang Yu swung his sword with precision, the blade meeting Li Yao's with a metallic clash that sent sparks dancing through the air. Recognizing his disadvantage in raw strength, he activated his newly improved phantom footwork, executing a smooth sidestep intended to let Li Yao's momentum carry her forward unbalanced. But Li Yao was no ordinary opponent. Instead of tumbling as he anticipated, she gracefully redirected her sword's tip downward, using the blade as a pivot point. In one fluid motion, she performed an acrobatic flip over the sword, landing with perfect balance on the opposite side before immediately creating distance with a controlled backstep. Li Yao caught her breath as she observed her senior brother preparing his next sword form. A mixture of admiration and competitive spirit flickered in her eyes. Senior brother is truly remarkable, she thought. Sparring with him now created genuine pressure that forced her to maintain peak vigilance and performance. The sensation he gave her was the same as the one she got when in front of the old man. And her senior brother had achieved it in such a short time. It was really impressive. He had evolved from someone she could effortlessly overwhelm to an opponent who generated this formidable battle pressure. More surprisingly, their roles had somehow reversed. Where once she had been his teacher, she now found herself learning from him, particularly in battle awareness. His exponential growth had turned their sparring sessions into mutual cultivation opportunities. As Xiang Yu exchanged blows with his junior sister, he marveled at how the iron body technique had transformed his durability. Strikes that would have previously sent him sprawling, he could now withstand with minimal effort. Though absorbing too many consecutive hits might still prove problematic, he thought, nimbly dodging another powerful strike from Li Yao. His progress was undeniable. Before, even when Li Yao deliberately held back, he had struggled to keep pace, constantly finding himself knocked to the ground. Now he maintained his footing against her at what appeared to be comparable cultivation levels. The realization brought an internal chuckle. Could it be that I'm also a genius? The thought emerged unbidden, but he quickly dismissed it as foolishness. A darker possibility suddenly occurred to him. What if Li Yao was still operating at a lower level of body refining than his current sixth layer? Since he couldn't sense cultivation levels within the body refining realm, and she likely couldn't either, there was no way to know for certain. He suspected she avoided inquiring about his level out of respect for his privacy, just as she concealed her true capabilities. This train of thought led him to a practical concern about his system. Why don't I have some sort of appraisal ability? He wondered. What if I encounter some invincible expert playing pig to eat the tiger? I'd be finished before I realized the danger. Just as these worries clouded his mind, his consciousness abruptly shifted. The training ground vanished, replaced by a strange, ethereal space. Within this void, he saw a reflection of himself, sword in hand. With deliberate calm, his reflection lifted the blade and executed a single, perfect downward slash, a movement of absolute purity, devoid of hesitation or unnecessary motion. When awareness returned to his physical body, he found himself effortlessly parrying an incoming attack from Li Yao, the movement identical to the vision he had just witnessed. "Senior brother, you," Li Yao began, her voice trailing off in astonishment. A rare, genuine smile spread across Xiang Yu's face. "I've reached perfect stage in my sword technique," he announced, unable to contain his joy. He hadn't expected to achieve perfection through his own comprehension rather than the system's doubling. As if responding to his achievement, something unprecedented occurred. Without being summoned, a system notification materialized before him, the first time the system had appeared unsummoned outside the reset period. Surprise flickered across his face as he stared at the notification hovering in the air. What could this be? The double EXP function was already absurdly powerful, allowing him to achieve what others would consider impossible cultivation speeds. Now there was something new. His mental command acknowledged the notification, revealing system function, double EXP, cooldown, 24 hours, fusion. Knowledge flooded into his mind instantly, a comprehensive understanding of the new system function washing through his consciousness. Fusion would allow him to merge techniques and scriptures, combining their strengths to create something greater than the sum of its parts. However, there were limitations. Techniques could only be merged if they had reached the perfect stage and were compatible with each other. Scriptures merely needed compatibility, without the perfection requirement. A thought immediately sparked in Xiang Yu's mind. The Mountain Heart Scripture and Sutra were described as two halves of the same whole. Wouldn't they be perfect candidates for fusion? To his surprise, when he checked their compatibility, the system indicated they couldn't be merged. This puzzled him briefly before understanding dawned. Perhaps they were considered halves not because they originated from the same source technique, but because they complemented each other, one cultivating the body, the other the mind. While slightly disappointed, he didn't dwell on it. His attention shifted to his perfect techniques, the basic knife technique and now perfected basic sword technique. The system showed they were compatible and could be merged immediately. A smile stretched across his face as he contemplated the power such a fusion might yield. Then, a more ambitious idea took root. The system hadn't specified a limit on how many techniques could be merged at once. What if I ask Martial Ant for more weapon techniques? He thought, excitement building. If they're compatible with sword and knife techniques, I could perfect them all and merge them together. The possibilities made his pulse quicken. Perhaps he could create something truly extraordinary, something like an invincible weapon master technique that would elevate his combat potential exponentially. With his mid-level enlightenment, perfecting additional techniques would be far easier than before. His mind made up, Xiang Yu sheathed his sword and turned to Li Yao. "Let's take a break," he suggested, his tone casual despite the plans forming in his mind. Li Yao tilted her head, confusion evident in her expression. "Isn't it too early?" Their training sessions typically lasted much longer. "No, it's just the perfect time," he replied with unusual enthusiasm. "We're going to prepare a feast." "A feast?" Li Yao's eyebrows rose in curiosity. "Is today a special day?" She mentally reviewed the sect calendar, unable to recall any particular occasion worth celebrating today. Xiang Yu nodded with apparent pride. "Of course. Today is the day I perfected 2 techniques." Li Yao's eyes sparkled with genuine appreciation. Perfecting even 1 technique was a monumental achievement for most cultivators. 2 was truly extraordinary. "I'll go capture more wild boars," she exclaimed, taking off with childlike excitement. As she disappeared from sight, The smug smile on Xiang Yu's face revealed his true intentions. He wasn't actually narcissistic enough to throw a celebration merely for perfecting techniques. His real motivation was far more pragmatic. This would be his first opportunity to prepare 7th-grade spiritual food. Walking toward the kitchen, he couldn't suppress a satisfied chuckle. With food of this quality, convincing, or more accurately, bribing, his martial aunt into sharing additional weapon techniques should be effortless. Given her obvious weakness for his cooking, she'd likely agree to part with several techniques. Once he gathered and perfected those techniques, he could combine them all into something truly invincible. The thought of such power at his fingertips made him laugh aloud, his usually cautious demeanor giving way to genuine anticipation. The kitchen hummed with focused energy as Xiang Yu channeled his newly acquired 7th-grade cooking mastery. Unlike his usual meal preparations, this feast demanded extraordinary attention to detail. His movements reflected the precision of his perfected techniques, each slice, dice, and julienne executed with flawless economy of motion. The abyssal void flame danced across his fingertips, responding to his will with newfound sensitivity. He adjusted its temperature with mere thoughts, controlling the black fire's intensity with unprecedented precision. Li Yao returned with 2 massive wild boars slung effortlessly over her shoulders. While she cleaned and prepared the game, Xiang Yu gathered rare herbs from Elder's personal garden. The elder wouldn't have parted with them before, but after he realized Xiang Yu's cooking skills, the elder encouraged him to use the herbs as well. As preparation intensified, Xiang Yu's creative vision expanded beyond individual dishes to encompass the feast as a whole. He orchestrated complementary flavors, balancing yang-heavy meats with yin-cooling vegetables, creating a symphony of taste designed to nourish both body and soul. With 7 different main dishes, 12 side plates, 3 soups, and a special dessert, this wasn't merely a meal, it was an event. The kitchen transformed into a controlled battlefield. Multiple woks sizzled simultaneously as Xiang Yu's hands moved with hypnotic speed. Li Yao could only watch in awe as he wielded cooking implements with the same mastery he showed with weapons. The most remarkable element wasn't the quantity, but the quality. Each dish glowed with subtle energy, actual visible qi emanating from perfectly prepared ingredients. When the meals were finally complete, Xiang Yu and Li Yao exhaled deeply, the exhaustion of preparing such an extensive feast settling into their muscles. The sweet aroma of their efforts had already begun working its magic, drawing Elder Gua and Elder Huang as if summoned by an irresistible spell. "Why are you cooking so early? Is there a special occasion?" Elder Huang inquired, her eyes never leaving the tantalizing spread before them. Li Yao answered with unbridled enthusiasm. "That's right. We're celebrating senior brother mastering 2 techniques to the perfect stage." "What?" Both elders exclaimed in perfect unison, their shock palpable. In the next instant, Elder Huang materialized beside Xiang Yu, moving with such speed he hadn't even registered her approach. She gripped his shoulders, shaking him with unexpected vigor. "Is it true? Is it true?" Her voice rose with excitement as she continued shaking him. "Quick, show me, show me, show me," she chanted. Though surprised by her enthusiasm, Xiang Yu maintained his composure. This was precisely the reaction he'd hoped for, but he wouldn't reveal his techniques before playing his trump card. "Martial Ant, let's eat first," he suggested smoothly. "The food is getting cold. I had a breakthrough in my cooking and decided to prepare this feast for Martial Ant as thanks for giving me the spirit flame." He finished with a respectful bow. "What? For me?" Elder Huang's eyes darted between Xiang Yu and the sumptuous feast, taking in the extraordinary colors, textures, and aromas. She couldn't suppress an audible gulp as her cultivation instincts recognized the unprecedented quality of spiritual energy emanating from the dishes. Suddenly aware of her undignified behavior, Elder Huang stepped back and composed herself. "You're right," she declared with forced dignity. "We should eat first before it gets cold." Xiang Yu allowed himself a small, satisfied smile. His martial aunt's weakness for exceptional food was proving to be the perfect leverage. Once she tasted his 7th-grade spirit cuisine, her happiness would naturally transfer to him as the provider. By explicitly framing the feast as gratitude for her previous generosity, he was establishing a pattern. He rewarded those who helped him. The subliminal message was clear. More techniques shared would result in more extraordinary feasts. His manipulation was subtle but effective. By linking his generosity directly to her previous gift, he was planting the seed for future exchanges, making her more inclined to share additional techniques that would accelerate his path to power. Everyone sat down as Xiang Yu served the meal. Rather than individual portions, he placed a large pot at the center of the table, allowing diners to refill as desired. As they took their first bites, a collective silence fell over the gathering. The food transcended mere flavor. It was a revelation. Each morsel exploded across their palates in a symphony of tastes, with every subsequent bite unveiling an entirely new spectrum of sensations. What made this feast truly extraordinary wasn't just the initial taste, but what happened after swallowing. The food seemingly vanished upon reaching their stomachs, dissolving completely into various essences that spread throughout their bodies. Some elements nourished the mind and soul directly. Others accelerated healing processes, replenished stamina, or gathered as concentrated qi that settled naturally in their dantians. This miraculous quality solved spirit food's greatest limitation, stomach capacity. Spirit foods had one big limitation, which was that one couldn't consume as much as they wanted, as they would eventually get full. By diffusing instantly, without leaving physical residue, it allowed continuous consumption without fullness. Even Xiang Yu, despite lacking spiritual roots, could benefit from the soul nourishment, enhanced healing, and stamina recovery aspects of his own creation. This, Elder's voice faltered after his first taste. The mind and soul nourishing effects struck him profoundly. At the golden core stage of cultivation, one typically had to continuously feed spiritual energy to their core until it eventually shattered, sprouting a nascent soul that marked breakthrough to the nascent soul realm. This meal's soul-nurturing properties were actively accelerating his nascent soul's development. If he continued consuming such food regularly, the time needed to manifest a nascent soul would decrease dramatically. But there was something even more significant occurring. Years ago, Elder Gua had suffered a devastating injury that destabilized his cultivation, damaging his qi pathways irreparably. Though technically at golden core stage, his combat abilities had deteriorated to mere core formation level, and his shattered core meant advancement was impossible. A broken core could never sprout a nascent soul. Now, as he savored each bite, he felt healing essences flowing through his meridians, gradually realigning his damaged qi pathways. His core, long thought permanently damaged, showed signs of regeneration. It was subtle yet undeniable, hope blossoming where none had existed before. Tears welled in his eyes as the realization hit him. All this because he'd once chosen to rescue a poor boy from a ruined town's pavement. The cosmic serendipity overwhelmed him, streams of tears rolling unbidden down his weathered cheeks. The disciples noticed their master's unexpected emotion, exchanging confused glances. Could it be? Elder Huang thought privately, quickly assessing the situation. She turned to the bewildered disciples with a reassuring smile. Just enjoy your food. Senior brother is simply emotional because of how delicious everything tastes, she explained smoothly. Accepting this explanation, the disciples returned their attention to their meals. Elder Huang gave her senior brother a knowing glance before resuming her own feast. Though she typically delighted in teasing him and would normally seize the opportunity to call him a crybaby, she chose to spare him this time. As Li Yao continued savoring her meal, she suddenly realized the immortal empress had fallen unusually quiet. "You still there?" Li Yao inquired mentally, her chopsticks pausing midway to her mouth. "Stop talking, just eat," came the abrupt reply, the empress's tone carrying unexpected urgency. "What?" Li Yao couldn't mask her surprise. The Empress's voice held none of its usual dignified poise, replaced instead by something almost desperate. Why such concern over whether she ate? True, the food provided remarkable cultivation benefits with each bite, but the Empress's keen interest seemed peculiar. A warm thought blossomed in Li Yao's mind. Perhaps the ancient Empress truly cared for her well-being after all. Stop your delusions and eat. The Empress cut through her moment of sentimentality. Our souls are connected, so when the food nourishes your soul, it nourishes mine too. Understanding dawned on Li Yao. The Empress's unusual silence wasn't concern but self-interest. She was allowing Li Yao to eat undisturbed, so she could maximize her own benefits from the soul-nourishing essence. A smug smile curved Li Yao's lips as she picked up another morsel. Now you get what I always see in Senior Brother, she teased, her mental voice lilting with satisfaction. Yeah, just eat, the Empress replied dismissively, though lacking her usual aloofness. Li Yao's smile widened as she continued eating. She'd never imagined the haughty, immortal Empress had this side to her, so nakedly appreciative of something as simple as food. It seemed the soul-nourishing essence was particularly valuable to souls who lacked physical forms to cultivate normally. The feast stretched on luxuriously, the four cultivators indulging in Xiang Yu's extraordinary creation for nearly 2 hours before finally emptying the last dish. Though the food dissipated immediately upon consumption, leaving their stomachs physically empty, they all reclined in their chairs with a distinct sensation of fullness, their bodies heavy with pleasant fatigue from the extended dining session. They simply couldn't stop until every morsel was consumed. The cuisine was too exceptional to waste. Each bite had been an investment in their cultivation. Elder was settled back in his chair, expression serene as Xiang Yu collected the empty plates. His meridians and qi pathways, damaged for so long, now flowed with renewed vitality. He could feel his golden core strength returning, though he recognized the risk of exerting it prematurely. Better to allow his core to heal completely before attempting any significant moves. Still, the progress was remarkable. He estimated his core would fully regenerate after just a few more such feasts. While daily banquets of this magnitude might be impractical, even Xiang Yu's regular meals would contribute to his healing, just at a slower pace. Having long abandoned hope for recovery, Elder Gua found himself unexpectedly patient. What was a longer wait when compared to the miracle of having any hope at all? And perhaps his talented disciple might achieve yet another breakthrough in his cooking skills. Xiang Yu finished washing the utensils, his movements efficient and unhurried. As he dried his hands and turned from the basin, his expression shifted subtly, a calculating gleam entering his eyes. The time had finally come for the main topic. Time to get his money's worth. After a few minutes of relaxation, allowing the remarkable benefits of the spiritual food to settle throughout their bodies, Elder Huang finally circled back to the main topic that had initially excited her. You really reached the perfect stage? And in 2 techniques no less, she asked with undisguised amazement as Xiang Yu demonstrated both his perfected knife and sword techniques. Even Elder Gua watched from the side with surprise etched across his weathered face. Though he had long recognized Xiang Yu's genius-level comprehension, he couldn't help being impressed each time he witnessed it in action. The flawless execution, the economy of movement, the perfect balance. Truly, his disciple had achieved something remarkable. Elder Huang leaned forward eagerly. So, did you want to choose another technique to practice? Her enthusiasm was palpable. She had finally found a worthy test subject for her theories. If Xiang Yu could master techniques at such an astonishing rate, her experiment to unlock that special physique might actually succeed. Given a few years at this pace, he would definitely break through that legendary barrier. But Xiang Yu's response caught her off guard. Actually, I wanted to pick more than one, he said, scratching his cheek with feigned casualness. Elder Huang blinked in surprise. Had success gone to the boy's head? How could he possibly practice multiple techniques simultaneously? As his martial aunt, She needed to guide him back to the correct path. If he strayed now, he might never unlock the physique she sought. "Martial nephew," she began carefully, "although I acknowledge your talent is extraordinary, you simply cannot practice many techniques at the same time. They will interfere with your progress." Her tone carried the weight of centuries of established cultivation wisdom. Xiang Yu had anticipated this response. Time to deploy his first trump card. "Martial ant," he explained with calculated humility. "I've actually realized that I practice techniques more easily when I'm working on several simultaneously, just like I did with the knife and sword techniques." Elder Huang's eyebrows rose in genuine surprise. Was such a thing even possible? Throughout cultivation history, focus had always been prized above breadth. Still, skepticism lingered in her expression. Seeing her doubtful look, Xiang Yu smoothly employed his second trump card. "How about this?" he proposed. "I'll practice them for a month, and if I can't perfect all of them, I'll give up and study just one at a time." Elder Huang fell into contemplative silence. Xiang Yu seemed like an honest, straightforward disciple. Perhaps he had simply been misled by some unconventional cultivation theory. In the grand scheme of her plans, a single month wasn't significant. Besides, after the extraordinary feast he had prepared, refusing his request seemed ungracious. She considered that teenagers naturally rebelled against restrictions. Being too rigid might have the opposite effect, making cultivation feel like a chore rather than an opportunity. He would likely grow out of this experimental phase on his own once he faced its inevitable limitations. "Okay," she relented with a smile. "Which techniques do you want?" "I want all the weapon techniques you have." Elder Huang nearly toppled from her chair. She had expected him to request perhaps 2 additional techniques, but all weapon techniques? Had the boy lost his mind? "Can I?" Xiang Yu asked, masterfully adopting a pitiful expression that contrasted sharply with his usual stoic demeanor. Elder Huang could only sigh in resignation. It was just a month after all. He would inevitably abandon this folly when he discovered he couldn't handle it. She decided to begin with just the basic weapon techniques, allowing him to play around without risking confusion from more advanced methods. The higher-level techniques could wait until he had demonstrated proper focus and discipline. "There are 20 weapons techniques in cultivation. Since you have mastered the first 2, I'll give you the other 18, Elder Huang said with a resigned sigh, her expression a mixture of skepticism and indulgence. Xiang Yu fought to contain his excitement. His plan had worked perfectly. With his system's exponential growth, would it even take a full month to master these techniques? And even if it did, once they were recorded in his system, he wouldn't need the physical manuals anymore. He could practice them at his leisure, steadily perfecting each one without external pressure. In the next moment, 18 manuals flew from Elder Huang's spatial ring, landing neatly in Xiang Yu's waiting hands. He quickly flipped through the pages, his eyes scanning the content. Though he noticed they were all basic-level techniques, disappointment never crossed his mind. With this many techniques available for combination through his newly unlocked system function, he had no doubt he could forge something extraordinary. The techniques formed an impressive array of cultivation methods. Basic spear technique, basic staff technique, basic bow technique, basic whip technique, basic saber technique, basic dagger technique, basic fan technique, basic chain technique, basic axe technique, basic hammer technique, basic fist technique, basic claw technique, basic palm technique, basic kick technique, basic grappling technique, basic throwing technique, basic dart technique, basic needle technique. As he examined the list more carefully, Xiang Yu found himself genuinely impressed by the comprehensive collection. Some techniques particularly surprised him. It seemed that even body parts like fists and legs were considered weapons in the cultivation realm. "Take this," Elder Huang interrupted his thoughts, tossing a small pouch in his direction. Xiang Yu caught it easily, feeling the unusual weight and texture. It seemed ordinary from the outside, but he sensed something extraordinary about it. "This is a spatial pouch," she explained, her tone softening slightly. "I put all the weapons you'll need inside." She spent the next few minutes patiently demonstrating how to access the space within, how to withdraw specific items, and how to secure the pouch against theft. After the explanation was complete, the two elders finally departed, leaving the disciples alone with their newfound treasures. Xiang Yu held the spatial pouch reverently, turning it over in his hand with wonder. Spatial treasures were exceedingly rare in this world. He never expected to acquire one so early in his cultivation journey. Despite her skepticism about his training methods, Elder Huang had been remarkably generous. He silently thanked his martial aunt in his heart, appreciating her support despite her doubts. "Senior brother," Li Yao asked, her voice tinged with genuine curiosity, "are you really going to practice all 18 techniques at the same time?" The disbelief in her tone mirrored Elder Huang's earlier skepticism. "Yes," Xiang Yu confirmed with unusual confidence. "With your assistance, I'll master them in no time. Then we can have another, even bigger feast to celebrate." Li Yao's eyes immediately lit up at the mention of food. "Another feast?" she exclaimed, her previous doubts instantly forgotten. "I'll definitely help senior brother," she shouted with childlike enthusiasm. Xiang Yu smiled at her predictable response. His junior sister's simple motivations made her remarkably easy to manipulate. She was lucky that he wasn't a bad person otherwise.